Who's the athlete that you are like, man, this person was just absolutely dominant at their sport, and like, if you're into the sport or not, you can just sit back and be like, that is amazing.
So I grew up, my best sport was always swimming. When Phelps won I believe it was the 100 fly, goggles full of water. I understand, it's swimming, it's swimming. He's blind. He dives in. I mean, it's the most frustrating thing when you have a little water in your goggles. But for him to have the muscle memory, count the laps, know the strokes, hit a wall, ideally hit the wall perfectly. He's behind. You can't see anyone in either lane. His muscle memory and his actual like stroke count, where he is, what he has to be, he's swimming completely blind. And he out touches. So it's not even like he just hits the wall. Like he actually does a perfect touch. Gets up, and anybody, if you watch the video, he pulls his goggles off, water pours out, he turns to Bob and his coach and goes, I couldn't see.
All right, guys, bang, bang. I'm here with John. You wrote a book that ranks presidents based on their athleticism, which just the premise of that alone is absolutely absurd and awesome. Where did that idea come from? And who is the most athletic president in history? And who is the least athletic president in history?
Awesome. Yes, a great place to start. So that book came from an article. I used to write for Muscle and Fitness magazine for a long time. For 7 or 8 years, I did all their big cover stories. WWE guys, UFC guys, football players, anybody who was jacked enough to kind of fit that mold. And I hijacked an issue during 2012, and you'll love this. I wanted to do like an athletic political issue, but not politics. Basically like politicians, but no politicians, like just sports and athletes. So none of it happened, by the way, but I mocked it up with a couple guys. It was called, the big cover line, picture a big jack dude, was red, white, and huge. The taglines were like freedom of the bench press, and like instead of Medal of Honor medal, it was METTLE, like tough guy Medal of Honor. All this whole thing, I mocked it all up, and the centerpiece of the whole thing was this article that I did ranking the athletic presidents. We basically did the article, me and a couple of my writers who were younger, like, this is gonna be so awesome, like everyone's gonna love it. It's gonna be like a buzzy thing, a little before Twitter, but like people are gonna talk about it. Gets to New York, we were in LA, the big publishers look at it and are like, yeah, no, we're not putting red, white, and huge. Like, we're not gonna talk about politics, even like tangentially about their muscular stuff. Like, we're out. So the only thing they kept was this top 10 piece, and they cut it down like hurt my soul as a writer. Anyway, right? Like, you just believe in this idea, and there was no real automatic feedback. So I was gonna get like emails later, and they cut everything out. The only thing I had left was the top 10 ranked, and they gave me like 80 words to talk about like why Abraham Lincoln was a street fighter, and Gerald Ford actually played football, all that. So that comes out. People love it. They're writing handwritten emails like, this was really funny. It was great. I start to pitch a book idea, and nobody, like, I don't have any idea. No one wants it. I'm pitching it to New York. I'm pitching it to LA. I'm pitching all the publishers. I had a loose like agent. This is 15 years ago. No one wants it. 2012, so 10 years ago. And I decide, do some research. I'm gonna put this fucking book out. Like, people talk about this stuff. I'm gonna put this. I already did like other books, but like the technology had gotten to the point where you could. First of all, I'm at a magazine, so I have people who can design the book. I have people who can edit the book. I have people who can lay the book out. I can write the thing. Like, I just need a printer. And Ingram just came out with this thing called Ingram Spark at the time, and Kindle had it was called like Kindle Direct Publishing or CreateSpace, I think then. And I was like, I'm gonna print like 50, and I'm like, it's not gonna cost me much. And if I sell 100 books, like, we'll see what happens. So I get into it. And it's like, man, there's a lot of presidents. A lot of them have like done nothing, but a lot have done a ton in the sports world. So then I realize the only way this is legitimate is if I take myself out of it and I come up with like an objective ranking system. Like if I like Mel Kiper the shit out of this, and I call it Jocks in Chief. So I come up with like 5 categories, like what they did in athletics before they were president, what they did in athletics during, how strong were they overall as a person, how tough were they, and then what was their legacy athletically. And I came up with a 1 through 10 scale, and I'm like researching Rutherford B. Hayes and calling like the Calvin Coolidge Library, like, did he really have these dumbbells and all this stuff? And so yeah, so that was how that book came out, and it was nuts.
When people read it today, what is their take? Is it like, hey, you should just keep updating it with each new president?
So that's the beauty of it. So from a business standpoint, every 4 years I have a new book. I added Trump when he came in. I have to wait. So the deal is I have to judge. He was like in the 20s. So people don't know, as much as people can't stand him, like he was actually a very good high school athlete. He was looked at in baseball. He threw in like the high 80s, played on the football team. And then he had a weird thing, like after all it was over, he has this ridiculous notion of like conserving energy. Like he doesn't, I found it's in there. Like he doesn't exercise because he believes you only have so much energy. in your life. So he looks obviously not like someone who exercises. So
that is an insane theory.
It's a quote. There's a quote in the book where he's like, I just, all the people I know who exercise are getting new hips and I don't want that. You only have so many heartbeats and I don't want to waste it exercising. You look like him and you walk around like him and that's what happens when you do that. But for a brief time, he was a decent athlete. No exercise in office, no focus on activity. So he was he's a big like overweight kind of guy, not in the Taft sense or even the Clinton sense, but he was up there. But the beauty of this story is, so I write the book and I have enough people through the magazine world that I can get it out there. It gets picked up in the New York Post. New York Post friend of mine, Kirsten Fleming, I'll give her credit forever, was like, this is a really cool idea. I want to interview about like, how'd you come up with this? I tell the same version of the story. She reads it, gets picked up a bunch of places because in the Post. I get a call like driving home to like get my kid to soccer. It's CBS This Morning, somehow got my number from her. Can you fly here tomorrow to do a live show on CBS This Morning? And I'm like, yeah. So I call my wife. I'm like, hey, we got to figure this out. Like, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm flying to New York, lived in Texas at the time. I'm like, they're going to put me like live to talk about this goofy book that, because it was in election season. I timed it right. I'm not an idiot. Like it's going to come out during the primaries and everything, or during the election. And so they fly me up and all of a sudden I'm sitting there, New York City, CBS, Anthony Mason and like the book cover is up there. The green room has a copy of it. Like people are asking me to sign it. And I'm like, 4 months ago, like not a single publisher on earth. I got 40 rejection letters. No one's going to read this. No one cares. It's a listicle. It's something in BuzzFeed.
Yep.
I sold like 900 books by the time I flew home. And so that was where the idea came from. And that was sort of the cool feel-good story of like, bet on yourself. And it still sells a couple hundred books a year. I don't do much with it. And every 4 years I put it out. So I have to wait till Biden's done because a portion of the rankings is on how they were fit in office. Like Reagan was notorious. Like he did circuit training. He did all this stuff. He rode his horse. Like he was into it. Obama, like always like exercising, playing hoops. Like he had a nice gym that it's like probably the coolest White House gym they had, all the way ranking down to other guys who didn't do anything. But so once Biden's out, I can add another one. But every 4 years, I'll just keep updating it and it'll just keep selling.
With Biden, he rides his bicycle. I know he does that. Is that considered like strenuous activity or not? No.
So that's
like on the lower end.
I put in the front, like, this is a book for like actual athletes. I'm not going to be like, oh, Harry Truman walked 2 miles a day, 2.2 miles a day at a certain pace every day. Like, okay, but who cares? Yeah. Like John Quincy Adams swam 2 miles in the Potomac in the winter nude. I give that a lot of credit. Like that was badass, right? Like
he was cold plunging before it was cool.
Plunging, yeah, and swimming. Like there's stories of him going like 2 miles, like going off course. Like his staff like can't find him. Like they're running along the edge with his clothes. Like you gotta come out, you gotta come out.
Can you imagine today the New York Post being like the president is naked in the Potomac swimming?
Amazing. There's a great one of my favorite quotes from the whole book. So Taft, big guy, like. He gets hit a lot, always like knocked out, the fattest president. But you know what? Like he worked really hard. He was a wrestler in high school. He tried really hard to stay in shape. He hired fitness people. Like he just was a big dude. As he got older, it was really hard to keep the weight off. So he also was a big like swimmer type because it was easy on his joints. So he goes to the ocean. I think it was in like Cape Cod or something on like a president's retreat. And he starts wading out, the big guy who got stuck in the bathtub. And then he's about to go in. A bunch of his staff are going to go in. They go, wait. President's using the ocean. Only one man at a time. There's no room for anybody else.
That is absurd.
It's like the best staff joke ever about the president.
All right, so you wrote another book. You've written a lot of books, but there's a couple I want to specifically talk about. 1996 is the best sports year of all time.
Yes.
Why?
All right, so I wanted to write that book since I was a kid. It's 96 year I graduated high school. And my kids are now 9 and 11. My son is really into sports. My daughter, not so much. But like everything we talk about now, if you think about it, like the whole world changed in 96. The whole sport world changed in 96. So I originally had the idea called like Decade of Icons. I was going to focus it on all the 90s. And then my agent and I were kicking it around. And he was like, these yearbooks of like the year. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a biography of a sports year. Not that it's like never been done, but no one's really tackled it that way. It's always like a year in review or a look back. But I was like, I'm going to do a biography as if the year was a person. So if you think about it, just from a sports perspective, and actually I think I talked to your brother Joe about it, like on an email chain once, like, so before in 1995, I'm in high school. Nobody cares about Tiger Woods. He's just an amateur person. The few people outside of golf I've ever heard of. Allen Iverson is in high school. I mean, he's in college, Georgetown. He has a March Madness, but like, that's the first time he shows up. He's not a household name, nothing. Kobe's nobody. The high school kid that's supposed to be good at basketball, outside of people who follow it, no one cares, right?
AAU circuit or whatever.
Shaq's on Orlando, so there was no Kobe and Shaq right there. Okay, you got no The Rock, no Stone Cold. Both of them were screwing around, just hadn't gone on to sports yet. No Major League Soccer. no WNBA. You've got Mike Tyson still in jail, hasn't come back yet. So like when you look back at now, everybody, you can't talk about sports. Every athlete now, and I've interviewed, I've done books with them, they look back. Who are your icons? Kobe, Iverson, Tiger, Shaq, the Kobe Lakers, like MLS now, Soccer Matters. You know, WNBA is now huge. People actually follow it. Before, in 1995, none of these conversations happened.
Yeah.
They didn't even matter. So if you look at like, it's like a line of demarcation, like before 96, none of that happened. And then after. And then the second part of it is, if you look at the people who were huge in 96, right? So you've got the Cowboys win their third Super Bowl. Like look at that team, right? Like Michael Irvin still on TV. Dion, as big popular-wise probably as ever. Aikman, the #1 announcer. These guys have been on TV on Sundays for like 25, 26 years, right? Commercials. Now he's doing Geico with Nick Saban. He was doing like Domino's with David Robinson. Like these guys have not left. They haven't left the scene. Tiger is as influential as ever. And so if you look back, like there's this line. Everything I talked about in high school was cool. But from then on, it's all these new people who came into existence in the sports kind of universe in 1996.
I remember Allen Iverson. He was like literally one of my childhood like heroes in sports, right? Yeah. And I remember as he was becoming more popular in the NBA, I was in middle school around like the late 90s. And we convinced our coach, who had zero power, I'm pretty sure he was a volunteer, to mandate, which really meant we were mandating, that all of the team got the first Allen Iverson shoes. I think they were the answers that they had a little zip up. I think those came out before the questions. The questions came out later, if I remember correctly. And so remember, there's like 12 to 15 white kids in a random, middle school in the middle of North Carolina, which is a huge basketball, like all stuff. And we all get these Allen Iverson shoes. And I remember parents being like, who's Allen Iverson? Right? Because I mean, he was like really just starting to become popular. And then they go and they look and they're like, I don't know if we're into like the whole team wearing the Allen Iverson, right? And he had the armband, like he was starting to put it all together. And then I remember as our parents fought it, we became more obsessed. He got on the cover of Slam magazine, and like as soon as all that hit, it was like Allen Iverson cannot be fucked with. And then of course practice, and then it like exploded. And our parents were like, "What is going on? Who is this guy? Why are our kids always trying to watch Sports Center every single night to see who we crossed up?" Like it just snowballed into this huge thing. And it's like, you don't remember. Like I definitely don't remember really before that. Like that is like a seminal moment for me of his like big explosion onto the scene, and he changed how basketball really got played.
Because we were, so I'm a little older than you, and it was like Bird, Magic, like, all those guys, Michael, like when you're watching the 92 Olympic Dream Team was like the biggest thing ever. And like you're moving on, those guys are all retiring then. Now, obviously Jordan won 97, 98, like still big, but from an influential standpoint, like those guys were clearly at some point moving on. And then you have like Iverson. And the beauty of Iverson is like, he came almost out of nowhere. He was your size. I mean, I covered him a bunch when I went for Hoops Heist and some other places. Like he was 6 foot. He was 160 pounds and he was in this land of giants and had just this fight in him. And you didn't have to be from anywhere to just watch him and be like, this guy is different and he's awesome. And then some of the stories like that I had uncovered for 96 are incredible because, so he was a Nike guy. Nike high school, John Thompson's Georgetown's Nike. Thompson is on the board of Nike. Everybody's like, he's going Nike. Reebok is like, you go to Nike, Jordan signs Iverson. You go to Nike, it's like, oh, maybe Penny will give a little push to Iverson in the little Penny commercials. Iverson's like, no fucking way. I want my shoe. And he goes there and they come up with this huge campaign. I can't remember the name of the two guys, but they were watching March Madness and they're like, we need him. We're basically going to say to our guys, we're going to put our entire marketing budget on this guy. Basically what Nike did with Jordan way back when. And we're going to we want him to be him. We don't want to polish him into Nike or into Reebok. We want to make Reebok what he wants. And Iverson was like, that's who I am.
I get behind that.
I can get behind that. And he comes out and he's in, inputting, designing the shoes. They let him be who he wanted to be. And it was like the most brilliant sneaker decision you could ever make from a company perspective.
I always say that the questions still to this day, I think are the best shoes ever made.
96 was cool because you still had Jordans. His shoe comes out. Shaq had the Hypnosis, like which it looked like it was weird. And then the pennies were cool, and Pippen had his own shoe. And like some of these shoes that came out then were great, but there was no answer to the Jordan. It was like the Jordans in general. There was nothing as cool. There were shoes that were like definitely people like Penny, Shaq, whatever. but there was no athlete who you were like, I'm going to rep these shoes because I think he can stand up and be as cool as Jordan. And, that's what Iverson meant. So from 96, it's like, how do you even talk about basketball in 2023 without Kobe and Iverson? Because every athlete you talk about, LeBron, Pick'em, Kevin Durant, their favorite athlete was either Kobe 100%. Or Iverson.
Yeah. The other big moment I remember where an athlete kind of broke through with a bunch of my friends was Carmelo Anthony in March Madness when he and Syracuse went on the huge run. Yeah. And everyone was just like, dude, who is this guy? And it was the same type of ingredients though, right? It was like, it was a kid who just like, obviously size-wise he was different, but it just like, this kid is not going to quit, and he's just tough as shit. Yeah. And I think that there was something about that entire like kind of mid 90s to like early 2000s where kids that were like maybe college down to like middle school, and if you were into basketball, you were just like, things are changing. Yep. And these guys are like the leaders of this new wave.
Yeah, you had, it was almost like they had that passing the torch. It skipped over because it's really not Jordan to Kobe and all these guys. Like there was an era in the middle of like Marbury, Garnett, Chris Webber, and some of these guys they were awesome, but they didn't, McGrady, like they didn't capture your imagination. Vince did because of his dunks, and that was sick. But like he never had the playoff stuff. He never made a finals. He kind of never pushed over that hump of being like the cultural icon. Yeah. But it was Iverson and it was Kobe, and it's an unbelievable thing to think about. Like, you're sitting in high school, it's like that conversation of who's Allen who? Like he plays for where? At Georgetown? He played football somewhere in high school. Like Kobe, like who the Hornets want him or the Lakers are going to get him? Like, okay, what a bust. Another high school guy nobody cares about. And now it's changed completely forever.
All right. So LeBron played football in high school. I think he broke his finger or something, so he stopped playing. Yeah. But his team either won the state championship or like they're like good. Yeah. And obviously, if you've got a 6'8" dude running down the sideline, it's pretty hard not to be good. Allen Iverson was a quarterback in Virginia. He claims he was better at football than he was at basketball.
I have a great story on
Okay, go ahead.
He gets to Georgetown. So he gets in a lot of, I'm sure people listen, he got in some trouble. He got in a fight at a bowling alley.
And there was like legit violence, not shooting,
but
like
real fight.
They were throwing chairs. Like it was pretty bad,
unfortunately, like back then in the South, like only the white kids got in trouble. All the black kids got arrested, especially Iverson, like ruining his future at the time. And it's cool how some of my books intersect. Like I did a biography on Charlie Ward. They were looking at him as the next Charlie Ward because he was an incredible quarterback, great arm, elusive, all the same stuff Charlie could do. And it was a couple of years after Charlie had just won the Heisman and also taken his basketball team to the Elite Eight. So they're like, can build a college offense around him. Florida State looked at him. A bunch of schools looked at him. He gets in trouble. No one's looking at him. In like the greatest mom move of all time, Iverson's mom drives up to Georgetown, talks to John Thompson, and is like, "Help my son. Like he cannot. This can't ruin his life." Thompson takes him, brings him up. Like, you will listen to every goddamn word I say, and I will bet on you, and you will just listen to me. Iverson says, "Great." So the first year, unbelievable. Second year, Iverson's like, he's becoming who he is, a little bit of a star, decides to roll into Big John's office and test his weight and says, "I want to play football." He says, "Get your ass out of here." I brought you here to play basketball. And it's a great story, and it's true. And so Iverson was that good. He was being looked at for both sports.
When I think of his story, and then you compare him to Charlie Ward, I don't actually think most people would think of those two as the comparison, because then it was the comparison. Right. Now I think it's Deion and Charlie Ward. Who's more athletic?
So this is, when the book came out, this was like the number one question. Like, it's like, all right, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, and Charlie are the only ones to have. So this is my answer. And I think this is the way and I've thought about it. I promise you, like, way more than anybody else. All right. So Bo Jackson, if you've read Jeff Pearlman's books, it's incredible. It just came out. Like, he was born a physical freak, and he used that to be like a mythological character in football and baseball and track. Actually, also, he was unstoppable. He could jump over 5-foot fences, 500-foot home runs. Like, there's stories in there, and the research he did is incredible. Like, he was an unstoppable force. He could get out and run anybody. He was a singular talent. He handed him the ball, he ran, put him at bat, he hit. Deion, same thing. Like, fast as could be, returning punts. The team didn't rely on him. The quarterback got him the ball, in baseball, pitcher pitching the ball. Charlie was the quarterback and point guard. He wasn't just some guy who was getting by on speed, although he had world-class speed. And he wasn't just some guy getting by on like athletic ability, although his father was an exceptional high school athlete. Like, he clearly had the genes for it, but he was a brilliant athletic mind. And he had to run the offense. Every play went through him, shift gears after football, and then go play basketball and take that team to the Elite Eight. And he plays starting finals, like NBA point guard. So to me, the best team athlete, the best leader is Charlie Ward. Obviously, Bo is probably like in a decathlon, Dion and Bo might be better.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me, I think Charlie's the most impressive.
What about somebody like a Myron Rolle? So Myron Rolle, for those that don't know, I think he played at Florida State. I don't think they won bowl games. So I don't think they won a national championship, right? And then he got a Rhodes Scholarship. And if I remember correctly, there's like some controversy because it was like, is he going to go take the scholarship and go and do that, or is he going to go to the NFL? And he chose to go do the scholarship, and he wanted to become a doctor. And I think that he's actually
a neurosurgeon now.
I think he's become a neurosurgeon. And so like when you look at somebody like that, that's not two sports, but like that may be harder than playing football and basketball is being on Florida State's football team, winning bowl games, and also like becoming a neurosurgeon.
Yeah, the classwork is crazy. And one of the themes of all these guys that I end up talking to is like, at some point, the work needs to be done. The film room has to get done. Like, especially if you're a quarterback, especially if you're a point guard, even in high school, some of these guys who are playing all these sports are shifting back and forth constantly, and school, right? And so the mental agility, I think, and that's again why I put Charlie a little ahead in terms of just an overall picture of like running an offense on both of those. Yeah, like he jumps into college basketball at like January, and like he's playing against guys who all they do are 5-star recruits, McDonald's All-Americans from North Carolina, NC State, like the best schools in the country, Duke, and he just came off winning the Heisman National Championship, and within a month they are a well-oiled machine. Okay, he had a Sam Cassell on his team and Doug Edwards. He had some players, so it wasn't like he had no one there. But he's a point guard. Immediately comes in and like picks up the stride, Elite Eight. So it's like when I think about being able to do that, and then the same thing the flip side. While everybody's doing spring football and spring practices, he's in the March Madness, and then he's like shifting gears back into like running the offense for Bobby Bowden. So to me, I put that just as like a little bit of I don't know how you want to measure it, but I put that as just a little notch above.
So in high school, I played football, basketball, and baseball. And I had obviously friends who just played football, friends who just played basketball. In college, I played football. And we at one point played unofficially some of the basketball players in basketball. It didn't go so hot for them. It just, there's a physicality that they just weren't
especially
used
in the middle of football season.
Yes. But one of the debates all throughout high school and into college that we'd have over and over again, is it easier for a football player to go play in the NBA, or is it easier for an NBA player to go play in the NFL? Which one do you think?
So I would say that from a sheer like physical standpoint, the NBA, you guys don't stop moving. Like if you watch, I've done the articles on like training for the combine, all this stuff. The physicality of the NFL is unmatched. But like you do your 20-second, 10-second route, or you're running back and your thing, you may be off the field, maybe not, you're maybe back on, you're maybe not. You don't have that in the NBA. And a lot of the guys pick probably which one they're going to be absolutely best at. But from a conditioning standpoint in game, I think it might be harder for some of the, especially like tight end, maybe by position, it's probably a better way to do it. But I think overall,
this is part of the debate, right? Is okay, the NBA player, like, what are they going to do? They can't be the quarterback. Most of them are like, I'll be a receiver or tight end,
and that's
right?
it.
Like that's pretty much the only two options on offense. And then on defense, they're like, oh, maybe I'd be like a D end or something.
I have a comp.
Right? All right.
I covered the summer league in 2001 or 2 when there was they were doing like there was an NFL strike.
Okay.
Tony Gonzalez, who played basketball at Cal
with Jason Kidd, right?
Yeah, with Jason Kidd, and then he goes into the obviously NFL. He's really good. I watched him in the summer league. He played for the Heat. He was saying if the NFL wasn't going to come back, he was going to play for the Heat. If you look at him on a football field, he's like this unstoppable, dominant, jacked force. He's just a dude on the basketball court. He's 5 inches shorter than Amari Stoudemire, who's there. The other power forwards, Caron Butler looks like he's his big brother. Hey, how you doing? Like Tony, like that's a big deal. These NFL guys, especially the running back, they can't play. They're too small. Some of them. But I would say like from a direct comp, having watched him again, he was coming off the NFL, the NBA. If he's an elite athlete, I mean, he was a bench player, like trying to make it so I'm not knocking him. Like obviously Hall of Famer football, and amazing that he could do all that. But if we're looking for maybe an apples to apples comp, like size wise and speed wise, he wasn't with those guys, and that might be the difference.
You wrote a book about Nate Robinson, speaking of size, and I think it's called Heart Over Height.
Yes,
if I remember correctly. Is his legacy ruined after Jake Paul knocked him out?
It sucks because he's one of my favorite athletes ever.
He's the man in terms of the basketball.
If you leave, I've texted him about, like, I blame his trainers Nate, at that point still, is one of the fastest. He should have not got hit for 5 rounds. And that's all. I don't know what their plan was, but if I were buying, I've covered a ton of boxing. I interview boxers. I like boxing. You like MMA boxing. Like, nobody can touch him speed-wise. He should have just spun around and worn him out, maybe, just lasted. The last thing I think he probably would have wanted to do is what happened and just get stone cold knocked out in front of millions and millions of people. But it hurts as someone who's a friend of his now, because this kind of happens when you do these books with these guys. You just get invested in their lives. You start to know them and their wives and their kids, and like you root for them. Again, when you do like a co-author thing, you're kind of putting your journalism hat away. So if I did like a biography on it, it'd be a little different because you're really coming at it from all angles. But Nate was the first guy to give me like a shot to like co-write a book with him. So I'll always be grateful to him for that. And he's awesome. We've had fun. But for anyone listening who doesn't kind of know, in a 30-second story, like Nate Robinson, Seattle, Rainier Beach, comes up, he's 5'7", 5'8". Even as like a sophomore, he's a phenom in football and basketball. And then at 5'8", he is the Mr. Basketball and Mr. Football in the state of Washington. Now he's 5'8", and if high school, he's probably 5'7"-ish, and a legit. I mean, I've stood next to him. I'm a tower over the guy. He could have played track, like ran track. He got recruited for Steve Carroll's USC team. Reggie Bush, Lendale White, like did his visit. He could have gone to Arizona, could have gone to Michigan, got looked at everywhere for football, got looked at a ton of places for basketball.
What positions did he play?
He played point guard and he was a corner.
Okay.
He was a ridiculous punter. Like if you have time, YouTube, like Nate Robinson high school highlights, like just every punt was like touchdown, 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 kick, touchdown, like picked everybody off. And he decided he wanted to stay home. Washington, he's like a big, like he loves his hometown. Like, so he goes, stays home at Washington. Freshman year, plays both sports, has like a huge interception in the Washington State game. Everybody's like, you're going pro. Like you're going to go to the NFL. And he's like, I want to play basketball. And they're like, you're nuts. Like you're 5'8". And he's like, this is what I want to do. So after his sophomore year, he quits focusing on basketball, first round draft pick, averages 16, 17, 18 points for the Knicks, 3 dunk contests, only got to win 3 dunk contests. So like, to me, that is his legacy, like an unbelievable, phenomenal, one of the best athletes we've had. And it sucks that like a generation of people are like, Nate, the guy who got punched in the face and
by the YouTuber.
Yeah.
So I have a controversy about the dunk contest.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should have various heights participate, because it doesn't look the same when a guy who's 6'10" does a windmill and then Nate Robinson does a windmill. You're like, dude, that guy jumped higher. You're like, no, he just had to go higher to get to the same rim.
Cooler, I know.
Yes,
I mean, that's like
they have an advantage if they can dunk. If you're shorter, it just looks way cooler than a guy who kind of doesn't even look like he's trying.
It does. Remember
to get
Dwight
up there.
tried the 12-foot one, and it just still didn't look cool. It was like, you're so big and there's not moving. And yeah, it is interesting because like, Spud Webb won against Dominique. And like, if you watch those old 85, 86 dunk contests, Dominique was like an artist. I mean, the moves he did, the movement of the ball, if you slow it down, like a full 360, like 8-foot radius dunk, but then Spud would do like a 360 and you're like, whoa, like that dude's like 4 feet off the ground. Like what the hell?
He's like hanging up there.
The dunk contest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nate was a power dunker too, which was cool, like in-game, in-traffic dunker, which was great. But I hear your point. Like it always looks more pleasing. He dunked over Dwight Howard, which is really cool. And he was like really creative. He had the green crypto Nate shoes to go over Dwight Howard in his Superman costume. And Dwight was a pretty good sport. I don't know if the 90s athletes would have been like, yeah, we're competing. Sure, dunk over me. That'll be great. Like,
I do think that there's a little bit of change there.
Yeah, I don't think the guys had much camaraderie there. But
why has LeBron never done a dunk contest? He's scared.
He's a punk. I don't know.
Oh, you don't like LeBron?
No, I like LeBron.
Oh,
I think he should have done dunk contest. I think it's
Yeah.
like if you look at the legacy of the guys who he's in line with. Jordan did it one, amazing. Kobe did it once, even though he wore his little warm up and won. Like you do it once. I think LeBron's there's undisputed, whatever, third, fourth. He's not, I don't think he's better than Jordan, whatever, who cares about that argument, but he's in the top, whatever, 2, 3 of all time. But he should have done it once. The fact
If
that
he had done it as a rookie,
yeah.
I think no one would have beat him.
No, he would have won. They would have made sure he won. And he had the ability. I mean, the dude could jump. He could touch the top of the backboard. Like he should have just done it. That's all. I'm saying he's punk only because like, I don't know who got in his ear of like, you're too cool for this, especially at like 19. Yeah. But he should have done it once and won it. And then
is
been
it
like,
a too cool thing, or was he scared of like, if you go up there and you embarrass yourself because you're trying too hard?
I can't imagine him being scared. He's the ultimate like physical specimen. Like his first game when he did that dunk, I think it was against Sacramento or whatever, like he had been owning dudes his age since he was like 12. Like I can't imagine fear would have come in. I think somebody was like, hey, if you don't win, he would have won. And I think he had all the dunks to win. I don't know. It's one of those
when
things.
When he was in high school,
yeah,
I don't remember. I was probably too young when Kobe was in his senior year. like some of the, I watch the videos now, but LeBron in high school was just like not fair.
No.
Like just literally watching him and they'd be like on national television, you'd be like, oh, there's like a game, right? Yeah. And you can watch it and you're like, dude, they got a 5'8" white kid guarding LeBron. And LeBron literally is toying with this kid.
Catholic prep school. The kid
literally.
Just rotated in. Yeah.
And this guy is like trying, right? Because he's like, hey, I'm on TV. I can't let LeBron dunk on me. And then there you go, just literally dunks on the whole team at once.
And they were cool because like, I mean, no one's going to build like a uniform and a look for a team around me or you. But it was like, do you like these green jerseys? Oh, we can get different. Oh, you like them big and baggy now with no sleeves? We'll do that. Like he had the cool shoes, the Chosen One cover. Like if you think the most amazing thing to me about LeBron is all the hype, everything. Now, if me or you, I would have been the biggest asshole. I probably would have done 50 things in my 20s that I'd be embarrassed about now or like been written off.
We
like,
probably did do those.
The fact that like he has all of that. And like good dad, good, you know what I mean? Like good husband, like smart in business, gives back to the community, no real like trouble, no fights. Like it's pretty incredible like that from a character perspective that he never went off the rails as like, I'm a 25-year-old millionaire, everybody loves me. Like it never happened.
The two biggest, I've always said this, right? Is like he's probably the one person with the most hype that lived up to it. And I would argue he probably surpassed it, even though he had Chosen One and all this stuff. But if you think of other people who were like similar vein, Sebastian Telfair, remember when he was coming out and like, and everyone was like, this is the next point guard.
I'm a Celtics fan. Like we had him. I was like, we're going to get the coolest. Like and it just doesn't happen.
It didn't happen. Yeah. And then in football, there was a kid, Tavon Austin. You ever hear this kid?
Yeah.
So him and there was a kid in Florida. I forget his name. But Noel Devine, I think was his name.
Yeah, I remember Noel.
And so both of these guys had highlight tapes that went like, these are like the first viral like high school football highlight tapes. And if the kid's name is Noel Devine that I'm thinking of, it's like the state of Florida didn't know how to tackle. Like literally, he would like run into a pile. There'd be like 15 defenders, right? And you're like, there's only 11 on the field. And like, no, I think there's 15. And he comes and he just pops out the other end. And so I remember being in like high school and college, being like, what the fuck is this kid doing?
It's nuts.
And then Austin, his highlight tape, the first 5 minutes is him literally dancing on the field of music.
It's awesome.
Like you're just like, you have to be good, right? Like if you put on your highlight tape, just you warming up, dancing to music, you have to go to a top D1 school because if any coach watched all of that, like they're like, okay, I gotta have the kid, right? And they all fizzle out. They don't make it.
It's hard. I mean, it's really hard, especially when, I mean, now it's even harder. But I mean, you're putting LeBron on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You've got cautionary tales of guys who, you know, that happens to and you never hear from again. I mean, Kwame Brown, you never hear from again. Like even if they're not that level of hype, and just it's his 20th year. Like it's insane that he's still where he is and he's going to end up being the greatest. I mean, the guys he's compared to didn't come out like that. They were high draft picks or whatever, but they weren't anointed as like the greatest basketball player of all time or whatever it was in their sport. And then like when you watch them dominate other sports, the greatest what if I ever see is so in a high school in West Virginia, Randy Moss was like a basketball player, like a power forward, and Jay Will was his point guard. And then in football, Jason Williams was the quarterback and he was the wide receiver. Like if you could have somehow let both of them do both, like obviously you're better at basketball, football, whichever one, like both plays different sports. But like, can you imagine if they like somehow like you two are like, can you have 5 years to both go play football on the same team in the NFL or college, and then you can both actually go play basketball together? Randy Moss was an unbelievable basketball player, greatest receiver of all time, arguably. But like, I love those stories of like the what ifs of who could have been and what could have happened if they just stuck with a different sport.
Randy Moss literally was so good that mossed became like a verb. like literally became a verb. Like you are very good. And then also I remember there was a song that came out when I was in college. Some DJ had like remixed it and they took, remember his interview where he was getting in his car and he was like straight cash homie.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Cash homie,
and they remixed the whole thing and they would just play it. Awesome. And he literally, you're just like, this guy is amazing at football. But it's cool to hear how good he was at basketball as well. Hey guys, what's going on? I hope that you're enjoying this conversation, but I wanted to interrupt for a quick second and tell you about a brand new conference that I'm hosting on March 4th at the Miami Beach Convention Center. The event is called LYCEUM Miami, and tickets are completely free for anyone who wants to come. I'm bringing together many of the most popular guests from the podcast over the last couple of years. Some of the guest speakers that we've already announced are people like Vivek Ramaswamy from Strive Asset Management. or Delian and Mike Solana from Founders Fund, Chris Williamson from the Modern Wisdom podcast, Codie Sanchez from Contrarian Thinking, and billionaire Christian Angermayer, among many others. I've got a number of amazing surprise guests as well, some that you definitely will not expect, and others that come from walks of life that you will be scratching your head as to how I even got them to show up. But come check out LYCEUM Miami on March 4th. The LYCEUM was a public gym in Athens, Greece, where people used to come together, talk about ideas, and debate topics that were important to society. I want to meet people in person, in real life, once again, after 3 years of a hiatus from real life events. And so I'm hosting the event. And as I mentioned, anyone from anywhere can come to this event completely for free. All you need to do is go to lyceummiami.com and you'll be able to pick up a free general admission ticket. Make sure you claim your ticket in order to get in through the doors. LYCEUM Miami is going to be a great time. So come check it out. Come hang out with me, many of the popular guests from the podcast, and other like-minded individuals. LYCEUM Miami, March 4th, Miami Beach Convention Center. I hope to see you there. All right, let's get back into this conversation.
Yeah, I love those stories. Like when I ever do books on a lot of these guys, I always look for that other, what was that other thing? You know, Vince Carter. Vince Carter was an All-American, and it could have been an All-American volleyball player. He was All-State. He was, I mean, if you think about it.
A volleyball player? Volleyball. Can you imagine that guy?
You're just some dude who only plays volleyball with your nice little like 24-inch vertical and your 6'2" jumping up. And Vince Carter, Vince Sanity, future like ridiculous dunker over everybody, jumps like 42 inches and puts the ball in your face, right? And they're like, he's gonna go to the Olympics, like he could be the future of American volleyball. And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
He's like, I'm going to go and play basketball.
But I'll play volleyball in the spring because we have a volleyball team. And like, who knows? He's never going to do it. He goes on the beach. Like Chase Budinger, who was in the dunk contest, went and played. I used to see him when I lived in LA. Like he played on the AVP tour. Like it translated over for him. He was really good. But like those little glimpses of like, what if Vince was like, I just want to be the greatest volleyball player that has ever played volleyball. I want to be known as the Babe Ruth of volleyball, the Michael Jordan of volleyball. That is going to be what I'm going to do. It'd be crazy.
But like, would anyone know who he is?
Nah. That's why I didn't do it. Like I mean, UNC or volleyball, like
yeah, I don't. I'm not even going to apologize for this, but I don't think I could actually name a single volleyball player.
Well, I lived out there, so I was into it.
You know,
Karch Karai is like the guy. Yeah. Dahlhauser and Rogers, and then honestly, the most famous is Misty May and Carrie Walsh. They're probably if you asked anybody just volleyball.
But do they still play? No, right?
I think maybe Carrie Walsh might. I don't know if she's retired yet, but they played. I mean, for funny, one of the coolest in-person events I've ever seen. It's very small, packed house. On the beach in Hermosa Beach, the CB, the volleyball AVP would allow anybody to go. They couldn't. California, you're not allowed to, at least if you couldn't charge tickets on sand because it was public property. So they would build the stadium, and you'd have to just anybody could show up and walk on. And Carrie Walsh and Misty May were about to beat the record. I don't remember who it was for the most wins by a doubles team. And it was the place like these are diehard like 1,200. That's it. Like diehard in the wool volleyball fan, beach volleyball fans who grew up watching these guys, and it was nuts. And I remember thinking like, man, if you just get to the thing that you are supposed to be doing, and the fans didn't get acknowledged. Like obviously they got the Olympics and all that, but it was one of like the coolest just moments to see. For them, it was like like Cal Ripken breaking Lou Gehrig's record. It was huge, and for that crowd, it was amazing. Did
Ripken? They pull the lights?
What's that?
Did they pull the lights? You ever heard this story?
No.
So I'm pretty sure, no, I'm sorry. Is it Cal Ripken or Lou Gehrig? And maybe there's a story about both of them. But one of them, I thought it was Cal Ripken. He was on his way to the stadium or something. Something happened and he was going to miss a game. And supposedly the lights on the stadium didn't work same day.
Interesting. Yeah, I heard there was a few of those with him, a couple one at bat type deals and things like that. To me, that record, I was in like, that was probably when I still really followed baseball.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But the last few years, he wasn't doing it. It was really just like, and he was an amazing athlete. He also could play basketball and other sports, but like kind of just, let me get my at-bats. Like I'm not batting 340 anymore. Here. Let me just get through this record and everybody can, clap and be excited about it.
Who's the athlete that you are like, man, this person was just absolutely dominant at their sport, and like, if you're into the sport or not, you can just sit back and be like, that is amazing.
So I grew up, my best sport was always swimming. And I have an appreciation for Michael Phelps that I can't have in other sports. below average at basketball. I can play one-on-one, I play all the time, but like I didn't even make my high school team. I was all county, all state swimmer. So it was the only sport I was really good at. I played football, punted, fullback, like bullshit, whatever. But I was good at swimming. I understood what it would take to be like a good swimmer.
Every fullback is like, fuck this guy.
Yeah. It's like
Mike Allscott is like, dude, get out of here.
Yeah, every single one. They're like, this guy, like, why? My thing was, you talk about funny jokes for being like an athlete or like playing two sports. I was a really good swimmer and I got on like our high school story. And this is a funny thing is like, so it's all these like nerdy swimmers. Swimmers are nerds. Like they're all, they can't talk. And I'm coming from football. I had to lose 20 pounds. Like I'm on this thing, high school sports talk with this guy, Jimmy Cavallo. And he's like, John, I'm 19 or 18, like this cocky, just douchebag. And he's like, John, you came from football. It looks like you want to, is there anyone else that you know of on your team or in the county who goes from football into swimming and it has this success? And I was just like, no, I don't think anybody can do that. And I like dead stare, like 2-shot into the camera. I get home and my message machine is, we're gonna have cell phones, like just, hey asshole, like, oh, you're like my friends we are gonna use this for the rest of your life. Like who the hell, like staring into the camera, like I'm a WWE, like throwing down the gauntlet, like, yeah, you try to punt and do butterfly, like, yeah, nobody can do that. So that is my little swimming moment. But Phelps, when Phelps won I believe it was the 100 fly, goggles full of water, I understand, swimming, it's swimming. He's blind. He dives in. I mean, it's the most frustrating thing when you have a little water in your goggles. But for him to have the muscle memory, to count the laps, know the strokes, hit a wall, ideally hit the wall perfectly. He's behind. He can't see anyone in either lane. His muscle memory and his actual like stroke count, where he is, what he has to be, he's swimming completely blind. And he out touches. So it's not even like he just hits the wall. Like he actually does a perfect touch, gets up, and you watch the video, he pulls his goggles off, water pours out. He turns to Bob and his coach and goes, couldn't see. Dude, I don't care what sport you're in, what you do. If you just try to swim one lap with goggles full and I just say touch the wall, you couldn't do it, let alone beat the rest of the best in the world at that event. So for me, it's Michael Phelps.
So when he did that specific race, he went down, touched the wall, and came back and touched, and it was over?
Yeah.
So down and back, basically, and touched the wall. So it's really a turn and touch the wall, and he did it all with water.
Insane. Butterfly. Not like even we can kind of maybe like, he couldn't catch, you have
well,
no
see, listen, I jump in the pool. I don't get water in my goggles. What's going on with this guy? How did he get water in his goggles?
I know.
You're the fucking Olympics.
Right? Do you think you have goggles that works? It never happens. I mean, everybody who swims at some point, the angle hits wrong or you think they're sealed and they're not, especially then, like the Olympics, you've got your cap, goggles, and the cap over the goggles, like the triple check, like you're double, triple sealed. I don't know how it happened, but the panic mode of the Olympics, like, oh shit, I can't see. And then like focus, calm down, and just swim your race that you've swum 4 billion times in practice by math in your head. It's the most insane. I think it's the most insane.
Is it better to swim with the water in there or just take them off?
I think you take them off if you could, because at least when you're up, you can kind of gauge where you are. I mean, I have contacts, so I'm screwed either way if that happens. But like, assuming he can see.
I can't even swim down, let alone down and back. But just wondering.
He can see, but like any swimmer listening now is like, that you look at all the other feets and there's a million things. I mean, the flu game and all this stuff that people did, and you can come up with.
Come on, the flu game, he was hungover.
Yeah, you can see. It wasn't pizza.
I'm joking. No.
But whatever you want to point to as like the thing. To me, the level of difficulty on that is higher than almost anything else.
What is the greatest sports moment in history for you? And not in terms of like everyone has to agree, but for you, like personally, what is the greatest moment?
The greatest moment for me is going to be the Sox winning in 04, the Red Sox winning in 04. So I grew up Red Sox. Right. I know Yankees, all that. But I'm going to see the greatest moment in person. And it's mainly because, and I wrote a piece about this, because of who's involved. So in order to have a great moment, like if you're sitting home on your couch, you weren't there.
Yeah.
It's like, you're high-fiving your friends or your brother or whatever. But it has to be in person first, I think. And it has to matter a little bit more to you guys because of who's there, where you're at, and what you're with. So the 1999 All-Star game, my dad somehow through work gets tickets for me, him, and my brother. Diehard Red Sox fans. We grew up in Boston. We're all going there. My grandfather's a diehard fan. My dad is, I am. Pedro is like rejuvenated the franchise, like the most fun, like incredible, charismatic pitcher I've ever seen. Favorite player on the team. And we go to the game. We're in the locker room. Ken Griffey Jr.'s there. Like this is like the only time ever we just had like full, Willy Wonka passes. Like my dad just made it happen. And I'm with my dad and my brother. We go to the game. We go to the All-Star game. It starts and magic. Pedro's starting, of course, at Fenway Park. And he strikes out the first 5 guys in the National League. Now, it wasn't a championship and it wasn't all that.
Yeah.
But like hugging your brother, like, oh my God, we're watching this happen live. It always is the first one that comes to my mind.
That's a pretty good one. You'll appreciate this because you have a brother. When I was in like maybe late elementary, early middle school, for some reason, like there was no decision making in our family. It was like, you are going to be a Giants and a Yankees fan. And I decided that like, I'm not going to do that for like a 2-year period. And I was like, I'm going to be a Jets and a Mets fan just to piss off my dad. And Subway Series happens 2001. Yeah. And I'm the oldest of 5 boys and pretty much the only one who like should probably go to the game in terms of like, I'm like 11 or, you know, whatever it is. And he doesn't take me, he takes my brother. And I asked him years later, I said, why'd you do that? And he goes, I wasn't going to sit there and listen to you talk shit to me the entire time.
Yeah, you suck.
And I'm like, you know what? That's probably the like best argument you could have made. Like you definitely should not have taken me to that game.
I did the same thing. My brother
I would sit there chirping the whole time.
You vibrate, you kind of like move around the other teams that your dad would hate.
Yes.
Remember, like my brother became a Bills fan for no reason. Like I was an A's fan in the 90s because of Ricky Henderson and all those guys. And like eventually you kind of migrate back to like, it would be cool to root for the same team. And if they suck, they suck. But like they were right around the time of like I said, it was right around when they got players. And it was like, oh, we had Nomar, we had all these guys. And it was fun. So
for me, I think the Olympic, there's an Olympic moment that like, I wasn't there or anything, but it resonates so much is, what's the guy, Johnson, I think is his last name, who he's running, he pulls his hamstring and he's like hopping around his dad comes out. And those types of moments, I always think like, nobody's running on the track in 2023, right? Or 2024. Like there is way more security now. And so like, we're kind of robbed of a lot of those types of moments when you look back on sports. There's a bunch of different things that happened where I think there is some guys ran on like the golf course or whatever. There's like a famous video, right? And they're like celebrating, smoking cigarettes.
Hank Aaron hit his home run. The guy's running around with him, shaking his hand. It was like, what? The guy would have been like bulldozed and probably tased at this point.
Literally, right? And so I do think that there's like this element of sports that like for security reasons they can't do it anymore, but that's pretty cool to see, right?
It was also, I mean, I didn't live it like in a city close enough, but like when I interview a lot of like the older generation, there was a lot of sneaking into games. Like the love of the game was like sneaking in, moving up in your seats, going up and scalping instead of having to worry about if it's on Ticketmaster, did you use StubHub or whatever. Like there was a bit more of like, it was kind of like free flowing. Like you could go and move seats and do things. And I think, it's super corporate. And also, this is to me the biggest part of that is like, if I want to know what any of the athletes we've just talked about are doing or any of the athletes are doing, I can just get their Instagram posting. You didn't see them. If you were at the game, you saw them and maybe SportsCenter, but that was it. If I wanted to see Larry Bird, we had to go to Boston Garden and watch him play. If I wanted to, in the 2000s, if I wanted to see Griffey, I had to wait till the Mariners came to Boston to go watch him play. Like the access now is in a certain way has ruined the exclusivity that kids have. Like if my son wants to see Luka Doncic highlights, he's just instantly on Luka's feed. There's 4 zillion Twitter accounts, YouTube accounts showing all this stuff. So when I finally do take him to the first time he's going to see that athlete, he's literally watching highlights in the car on the way there. Whereas it used to be, you were going to see Larry Bird. I was going to see Michael Jordan for the very first time.
The other thing that feels a little weird is a lot of these guys, when you get the the special like feeling or whatever taken away, is that they act differently as well. Like we're recording this and there's a story out that Ja Morant was potentially in a truck, like in a car with other players, and they were like, there's a red laser that people think might have been a gun or like all this stuff that now is coming out, and you're just like, would people be doing some of this stuff if Instagram didn't exist? Right? Like, yes, we get more access, but also it feels like some of the athletes do shit, and you're just like, why? Like, what are you doing? You have like, I think it was Shannon Sharp was like, you have a $200 million contract. Like, chill out. You're not hard.
And you know what else happens? Like, you lose perspective. So one of the good things that a lot of the best sports writers can do, the Bob Ryans, the Howard Bryants, the guys who write these big books and have followed over for years, is like, you put the athlete in their perspective, how good they are historically, what they might mean to a city. And that's why I really like Ricky Henderson's biography that he did, because it really places where Ricky came from in Oakland, why he was how he was with his cockiness and confidence, but also like what molded him to be who he was. And now there's no context. It's just crazy play or athlete does this. And there's no one, unless, Athletic, I know there's places that have it, but you're so exposed. You're going to see them the next day. They're going to go on Twitter and talk about it or go on Instagram and talk about it. There was a little bit, and again, I am all for athletes doing whatever they want, but we've lost a little bit of context of like, there was somebody like this. His name was Babe Ruth, by the way. Like, you know, it's like when you talk about, oh, the first guy, you know, what LeBron does in branding, it's amazing. Babe Ruth did all of it. The guy had his name on like 150 things. He had ghostwritten books. He had plays. He was in the movies. He had movies that he was producing. He had tobacco, Coke, gum, horses. Like he did everything. It was 120 years ago, right? 110 years ago. So it isn't that crazy what these guys are doing. It's just you see it all the time and you know all the behind the scenes stuff.
What's the Flex Factory?
Yeah, man, it's my pride and joy. Dude.
This is how I found you.
I have my son and my daughter and my Flex Factory. It is the garage gym. It is like a thing that I always wanted to have. So I spent a lot of time writing for Muscle and Fitness and Men's Fitness. That's my writing background. I came up writing for those two magazines in GQ. Well, GQ is a bit of an outlier, but whatever. Anything that had men's or muscle or fitness or like dudes, I could write for in my 20s. And all these athletes, whenever I'd go travel to interview them, they just had these badass home gyms, like full home gyms. I know like The Rock now with the Iron Paradise is probably the most famous version, but like I did a story with like Batista and John Cena, and he's got like a barn on the side of his house that's like a full Gold's Gym. That's his gym. And like Brock Lesnar, I went and did a piece on it. He's got like this huge hangar that is a full gym. You walked in, you'd be like, oh, does nobody go to this Gold Gym? It's like, no, it's just Brock Lesnar's. That's why no one's here, right? So I always wanted, like, I'm not going to have that, but I always wanted my version of it. And then you have kids and like working out is just hard. It's important to me. I'm a meathead at heart. Like I'm not going to not lift, but like you try to put it at lunch at work. And then, you know, I was just telling earlier, like, you know, you're trying to time it right. And then you take your pre-workout at like 11:15 and then get called into a meeting and you're like, oh, you guys don't want me in this meeting right now. I'm about to flip this table over. Yeah, you don't want me here. And like it times off wrong. And then you're just like, your heart rate's jacked, but you're just sitting there like, yeah, no, that's a good power play. That's awesome. You're like, you're under the table, like your legs moving. So like I wanted to make it
How often does that happen?
Not now, I work from home, but it used to happen a bunch. I used to work for the College Football Hall of Fame. And like, I loved it. It was great. It was all football stuff, but like we had a gym right across the street and I brought my kids to school early and all this stuff when I lived in Texas. And I used to go to those in LA Fitness. It was great. And I would try every day. It was a joke in the office. Like I'd try to time and they're like, have you taken it yet? Cause we might have a meeting. And I'm like, dude, fine, I won't. I'd, you know, put it back down.
Yeah.
And then, but some days it just wouldn't work. I'd be like halfway out the door, be like, hey, can you come in? We're going to go over this thing with this thing. And I'd be like sweating already. Like, gosh, you know, that like
faces
stupid, yeah. Like, yeah, red.
I always used to say, so obviously college football, like everyone's trying every concoction they can possibly come up with. The pre-workouts like dominate, right? And there was guys who would be like, hey, try this one because you get all the energy, like all the stuff, but like it doesn't give you the jittery feeling. Yeah. And I used to be like, nah, man, I don't know if that shit's working. Like you need, your face needs to be on fire. Like you need to literally feel like your skin is melting. And then you're like, I don't know what's going on in my body, but like, let's go to the gym.
I remember, and I don't take it anymore. It's funny because now that I have my own gym, like all the science behind like, you know, when you get up, I work out really early in the morning, like 5:30, and like you don't want to be jamming caffeine and creatine in your body right then. So I actually I don't take any pre-workout at all ever. But when I did, like you feel like the Hulk, man, like the good ones where your heart rate would jack up. And like, I remember one time I was like racing down the banister and like I did a swing around the banister old house and like ripped the banister off. And I was like, first of all, like that was awesome. Second of all, like I should probably not take trouble. Well, I was like, what was that? And I'm like, nothing. And I'm like, I just bore our house apart with my bare hands.
So in college, you know, there's always like these memories that you have where you're like, oh, this is like a different level. And there's two specifically, but one that just cracks me up to this day is the strength and conditioning coach. There's this other guy who was actually our running back / fullback or whatever. His name is Paul Forcellini. If he hears this, he's going to fucking die. So I'm moving in to college. I got my dad with me. We're moving like whatever bullshit in. And Paul and his dad, they're moving in. And I swear to you, this dude literally walks up to the elevator. He's got like a fucking refrigerator. and I'm like, okay. different world, right? Like I probably should go lift a little bit more before we get on the field. And so he gets hurt. And at one point, he says to me, he's like, hey, you should come down to the weight room. We're going to try to bench press. I think it was 135, like 100 times in an hour or something. Like some, you know, like ridiculous thing. You got a strength coach, you got this guy. And so they get started, they're going, and they keep going around like the corner. And I'm sitting there, like I'm a young kid, whatever. And all of a sudden I'm like, what the fuck is around this corner? And I go, and they're literally going into the cleaning supply closet. And the strength coach is like sniffing the fucking like chlorine or whatever.
Smelling salt, yeah.
And I literally remember saying to myself, like, oh, I thought that was a joke. Like, I didn't think people really did that. And he's like, no, it's better than pre-workout. And I literally were like, I don't care that much. Right? Yeah. Like that was the moment where I remember thinking to myself, like, I care, but I don't care enough to smell chemicals to lift. Yeah. And so I was like, there's a trajectory change here that is going to end up with me doing something else with my life than trying to like go do this.
It's hard, man, especially when you cover these guys. The levels are insane. The nutrient timing, they call it, of like, I remember I did a feature with the strength and conditioning coach for the University of Florida when Tim Tebow was there, his senior year. And this was like one of the most athletic teams you'll ever find. They had Emmanuel Moody transfer from USC. They had Tebow. They had Aaron Hernandez at the time, but they had a bunch of dudes who were.
And this is like, when he like is just like fucking up.
By the way, like if you, in that interview, all of them to a man, like he's the most impressive athlete we have. Like strongest dude as a quarterback, like a couple linemen, but like stronger than all the linebackers for sure. Hardest worker, like out there. And he was talking about like they would do they go to the swamp at 5 a.m. and do their sprints and gassers and then go and do their gym. And it was interesting because Ryan Lochte went there. He was like working out for the Olympics in the gym there, so it was kind of cool. And he would talk about like, here's when we take the creatine, so it kicks in here, and here's the glucose, and here's this, and we're watching heart rate for this. And that was when I was kind of realizing like, and I think they started having trackers for heart rate monitors. It wasn't like the the Apple Watch or Whoop yet or anything, but like it was like, okay, so they know like 15 minutes from now, this is when's the best time to do strength or stretch or whatever. And like you learn all these things from interviewing these like elite trainers. And so that's when like you understand that there's actually a whole entire philosophy and science of people dedicate their lives to optimizing their strength and conditioning. And it's like, yeah, so if you're just the guy benching with your pre-workout in your garage, like it's great. But like if I really wanted to do it, I could have a team of guys. Like
yeah. The two stories with Tebow that I always remember is I think it's in his book. He says that he's at like a high school summer camp, and one night in the dorm, they're like getting competitive with each other, and they're like, "Hey, let's see who can curl this bicep bar the most." Yeah. And so there's like a line of all the campers, and he keeps trying to move to the back, to the back, to the back, to the back, and he says he eventually gets a second to last, but the last guy won't let him get behind him. So he's like, I stepped up, and I was like, I have to do this so many times that he doesn't pick it up. And so the most anyone had done is like 30 or 40 times. And he claims he did it like 250 times, like some stupid number, right? And so the guy literally doesn't pick it up, whatever, he wins. But he's like, but I was the quarterback at camp and I couldn't throw the next day.
Yeah, you got to step up, man. Yeah.
And then the other story is they were doing like a tug of war type, like workout where it's you versus one other guy. And for those that don't know, like usually they kind of literally do tug of war, but like you pull somebody, but it's not just like pull the flag across the line. It's like you pull it until the coach literally hits the whistle. Yeah. And so you like play to the whistle is like the whole thing. And so when they were doing it at Florida, supposedly he was up against a lineman or linebacker or whoever he was going against, and he starts pulling them. And he literally is like just yanking this kid, and he pulls him down the hallway into the bathroom supposedly, and he like gets into the bathroom. He's like, I literally couldn't go any further back. Like I just like ran out of space. And then the coach like blows the whistle, and they're just like, yo, the quarterback is bodying dudes right now. Like not just doing it, but like embarrassing them. Yeah. And so when you look at that, you're like, yeah, that takes a special type of person to not just have the physical ability to do it, but to almost be like mentally in a state where like that's the level that you want to go to in order to assert your dominance and like leadership in a team, right?
Yeah, he really impressed me. So this is what, maybe 10 years ago, whenever it was. And I flew out there. I'm just a guy, and he was the most like sought after name in maybe not all of sports, but definitely college football. And like his Q rating was through the roof. Like he was about to win the Heisman. Like he was the guy. And he's a young kid. Again, like we talked about LeBron, like if I was that guy, like there's a real good chance I would be an asshole all the time. And everybody like this punk, like he just was born with this amazing ability. But they all talked about how great he was and, the first and last to leave, all that cliche stuff. But when I finally got a chance to interview him, it was like at the end of the day, he'd been working all day. I'm sure he had stuff to do. And, there were media guys like, hey, you had 15 minutes solo. Because I interviewed a bunch. The whole point was like, it was about the team, but I did get an interview with him. He started, hey, how you doing? And he was like, off, like it was so polite and like endearing. It was like I was like, what? He's like, where did you fly in from? And the first 10 minutes, I'm like, I don't want to waste all of it, but I found myself being interviewed but in a very polite, really caring way of like, how long was the drive? Because I lived in Florida. I was like, lived here. I was like, oh, you get any traffic? Yeah, it's tough around there. What do you live with your girlfriend? Like just the whole conversation. And I was like, yeah. And then I'm like, all of a sudden, like, hey man, let me ask
a couple questions.
Yeah, like you're awesome and you're nice, but like if I don't get these quotes out, this whole story sucks. But you're really great, and I'm gonna say that you're great. But like he left, and the guy was like, you know how often that happens? Like one of the media people, they're like, whatever it is, you can't bullshit that. There's no way. I don't care. You don't care. You're not going to just talk to some random guy who you said you have 15. And the reason I know this is because I've had so many athletes over the years who are just assholes, like who give you that 15 minutes and aren't even remotely putting their thought or focus.
Who's the biggest asshole?
Biggest asshole. There's a guy, I'm going to say it because there was a guy who I did a cover story with, and it was supposed to be for Muscle Fitness. And I don't even know if he's in sports now. I have no idea. And I think he would own up to it because he was a jerk. We flew there to do an actual cover story shoot with him. We had a photography crew, and it was a guy, he played for the Rays for a while, Evan Longoria. And whether he was having a bad day, some of these guys have them, some of these guys don't. He'd been in the league for a while, so it wasn't like a rookie type of thing. And he was just like, he wasn't into it. And we're like, we're going to put you on the cover. And he wouldn't, look, I always preface
he wouldn't answer questions, or
he was just not really posing for the stuff. He was like, oh, these guys are here. They'll be gone soon. And like, what do you work out? He's like, I don't really work out. Like it was Muscle Fitness. I'm like, well, what do you weight train? And he's like, I hate weights, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you realize like you could have just said no to this whole piece. Like he wasn't really in great shape at the time. Again, I always.
So maybe he was being honest.
I always put out like they are allowed to have bad days. Yeah. We're there for a job. Maybe something happened in his, like I always say that. In life he may be great, but for that 4 hours, and my photographer I did a ton of shoots with all the WWE guys, we left and he was like, dude, something's up. Like that was rough. Like we're not going to use this. There's nothing to use. We called her all home and they're like, what? And I was like, we didn't do the cover. So like maybe a great guy, but in terms of like, and I don't want to even call him an asshole, in terms of a rough experience, that was the toughest thing. And he'll listen, you have a huge file, like, Evan, I'm sorry, but like that day was brutal. Like we flew all the way out there from LA to Tampa and we didn't get the cover story. And who knows, maybe he's jacked now. We'll do it again. I don't know.
I love it. You also wrote a book about dads. And their ability to continue to work out. You have kids. What is, you said you wake up early and you work out 5:30. Like what's your daily schedule?
Yeah. So the reason I came up with the reason I had the garage gym, I always wanted a name of the Flex Factory. Like it just always.
So you had the name before the gym.
Yeah. I'll tell you that. So I interviewed Triple H. This is a true story. I interviewed Triple H for a cover story from Legend, right? Yeah, the whole thing. And I was talking to, he had kids and
I almost got suspended from middle school for doing it.
Yeah. That was a big thing. Like I was out of school, but like I remember hearing,
I was like, literally in middle school, and like for those that don't know, WWF at the time, there was a group, and they were basically going around, and they were taking a cross across their crotch area, saying "suck it." Yeah. And if you're a young impressionable boy, you see that, you're like, "That's awesome," and you would do it to like each other, like as a joke. It was like kind of like an endearing. No,
so you only did
like
it to guys joke. You liked. You wouldn't actually do it to start a fight.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But of course, teachers see it. Then it becomes like a thing. The parents are like, "What's going on?"
Football player, all up, like any high school, college where you went to, kids scored a touchdown.
They're all doing it. Yeah. Of course, it became part of culture to some degree.
It's still,
And I was in, I'm pretty sure it was like late middle school, and kids were like doing it all the time. And I think I like did it like at a friend down the hall. But of course, it's like classic, like out of a movie, like, right? Like the teacher is like coming around the corner and like sees it, right? And you're just like. Now you'd be like, whatever, like obviously it wasn't directed towards you.
Yeah.
But there can't be any disrespect in a middle school. And so I remember I had to like have a meeting and like do all this stuff.
And like, don't you know Triple H?
No, and I literally was like, oh my God, I'm gonna like get in trouble for this. And so I always remember thinking back like, dude, schools are so stupid, but also like they have to keep some element of control.
Yeah.
So that I have kids running up and down doing suck it.
Yeah, well, true story. So my son is into wrestling now, and we watch all Friday Night SmackDown and Monday Night Raw, and they did a 30th anniversary of Raw 2 weeks ago, and they brought those guys back. And for the first time ever, my son sees the suck it, and I can't get him to stop walking around.
How old is he?
He's 9. He's perfect age.
Literally, like 9 to 13 is like, you got him.
He has a whole like, kids have like, ring entry. He has like a ring exit to go to school every day he came up with. It's awesome. And like now he does this added to it. It's amazing. And so it
reminds me of the Mark Cuban. You ever seen the video of Cuban at he's on the sidelines, like he walks off the bench or something to a kid, and a kid is trying to like shake his hand. And so Cuban walks over. He like begrudgingly like walks over and he's like, all right, I'm gonna give this kid. And then the kid dabs on him.
Oh, nice.
and Mark just looks at him. He's got this look of like, are you fucking kidding me? Right? And the kid's like 10.
Yeah.
Right. And it's an amazing video because you're just like, in that moment, he's just like, I can't be mad because like this probably is the highlight of this kid's life right now that he just dabbed on Mark Cuban. But also like, kid.
My son will like he'll like fight with my daughter and end it with this, and you're like, good job. Like you use it correctly, and I'm kind of proud of you, but like you really can't do it now. It's old, first of all. People are going, what the hell? Where'd you come up with that? But it's awesome to watch them take all this stuff in. So Triple H, I was interviewing him for a cover story. And he switched the time a bunch, which happens, whatever, all the time. And he finally calls me. He's like, yeah, I'm just, I had to move things around. And I just made a joke like, oh, you know, trying to get the gym in. Because a lot of these guys, they travel 300 days a year, whatever. Like the move to get over jet lag for almost all of them to a man is hit the gym immediately. Like get off the plane, hit the gym. Like get your sweat in, get your stuff in, you get it done, and then you can kind of figure it out. So I just threw that out. I was like, no, I'm actually, because he was already kind of an executive already. Homie's like, actually work out at like midnight too. And I was like, what? And he's like, you know, I have kids now and I want to be home for them in the morning at breakfast. And like, there's no way. He's talking like, you know, in Triple H. He's like, there's no way I can do this. And I can't leave the house in the morning. During the day, I can't lift. So I think it's James Franco. He's a big, like, big power lifter, helps train him. I'm probably botched the name, but whatever it is. Anyway, so he works out. So I was like, man, that's what happens to me all the time on a much smaller scale. I'm not running the WWF, but like I run out of time. So I had started like bringing exercise stuff home for random stuff. So I had some dumbbells, some cables, you know, some bands, a couple like ropes to do stuff, jump ropes. And then I was like, I'm going to do like, I want to be able to just get it done before the kids are asleep. But my kids were like 1 and 3, 2 and 4. Like they're finally sleeping through the night, which is, as anyone knows, like
amazing.
You can't complain. You can't do anything or plan an early morning workout if you're up 3 different times because of night terrors or potty training or whatever. So when I could count on that, I just like slowly added shit. Like I got like a squat rack. And then I got like an incline bench or an decline bench. And then I got like heavier weights. And then I got a set of plates. And then all of a sudden I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like I started going all in. I got a hex bar and like slam balls and the On-It kettlebells with the gorilla on them. And like, I was like, I gotta, you know, I have all these posters from growing up, like my Reggie Lewis poster and Mike Greenwell and the Sultans of Slam. I'm like, I'm gonna like make this. I don't need a man cave. I don't want some room to watch TV. I don't care. Like I can watch it wherever. This is going to be like my room.
Spot.
Yeah. And I had this stuff. I have Larry Bird posters from when I was like 10. Like, so the whole wall now is basically like frozen in time in like 1991. And I get up every day about 5:15, sometimes 5:30, and I till 6:30, full hour. I do like powerlifting and on stuff one day and body weight stuff and dumbbells and switch. I have, you know, from all my time, muscle fitness and men's fitness, like I have a zillion workouts to pull from. So I just kind of rotate through. And then I finish at 6:30-ish, 6:40. I wake up my kids. My daughter's already up now. My son, it takes like 15 minutes to get him out of bed and do all that shit. Then we have breakfast and I'm making my smoothie. I drive him to school, walk the dog, and, you know, start the day at like 8 o'clock.
It's not bad.
It's pretty good. The dog walk's my favorite part because like workout done. Kids are like off to school, you know, never know what's going to happen with them. They eat breakfast, don't eat breakfast, forgot their homework, need $5 for a field trip. Like it's chaos even on the ride. Like, oh, you know, I always tell my kid, like telling me you had a homework to do today in the car on the ride to school is not telling me you had homework to do. It's telling me you forgot to do your goddamn homework and there's nothing we could do about it because I'm pulling into the parking lot in 5 minutes. So like, it's always that kind of stuff. So I get home, the 20-minute dog walk, we have a lab. She's great. Like on one wind, ready to go. Get home, you know, shower real quick. By 8:15, 8:30, like it's time to write, time to get to work.
Yeah. The my daughter is not old enough yet for homework, but when I think about anything to do with homework, I'm just like, dude.
I put out a tweet a while ago. It was one of my best ones. I wrote, Finkel, hating homework since 3rd grade, hating homework since college, hating homework helping a 3rd grader, hating homework since the beginning of homework. Stop it. And like every parent was like, yes, 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 yes.
I mean, like literally, right?
So much work. It's so stupid.
When we used to get home from school, my mom used to make us sit at the table and like do our homework before we go outside or like do whatever. And we like would cheat on the homework in front of our mom. Yeah. Not like cheat like cheat in school. Like we would be like, we're done. Yeah. So he would sit there for 3 minutes. Be like, no, I'm done. I finished it all. And we'd be like, they'd send you home with like the assignment, you know, thing or whatever. We'd be like trying to like erase shit, like whatever we could possibly do to convince her that we were done, we would try. And I think back, I'm like, we probably should have just done the homework and we've been done faster.
You know how to do it.
Forget knowing how to do it. We just been done quicker than if we had spent all that time trying to trick our mom into thinking our homework was done.
See, well, now the whole new thing is like, I'll be in my office writing or working. Like, you guys are doing your homework, same thing at the kitchen table. All of a sudden I hear like, Alexa, what's 43 divided by 17? I'll be like, that's not, well, I don't want to bother you. It's like, okay, wait, so you're just going to completely cheat and ask Alexa all the answers because you don't want to walk 15 feet? I appreciate it. But like, so I'll go in and, help. But like, there's so many, tricks and stuff now. Who knows what's going to happen when they're older. But like, they ask Alexa everything. Alexa, what's the capital of Senegal? And it's like, you have to, this is what the book's for. This is why you're supposed to be reading.
So like I go back and forth on this of like, yes, I've seen the like, whatever, the second grader or whatever being like 2 + 2, Alexa, like whatever, it's like 4. You're like, you probably should know that one. Yeah. But 43 divided by 17, like, I might ask Alexa. Well, I might double check if it was recorded, like no public math.
My son got ahead of it. He goes, Alexa, am I ever going to need to know what an isosceles triangle is? And I was like, now this is a kid. He's gone past what it is. He's gone right to, do I need to know this shit, Alexa? Because you know everything.
Alexa's like, kid, do your homework.
Yeah. He's like, your parents in the room? Okay, if your dad's not there, then no, this shit's gonna stop. If your dad's there, then we have to have that conversation.
And also I think that like most people's jobs, they just Google anyways.
Everything.
Right? Yeah. Like I spend, I don't know, more time than I'd admit looking shit up all day.
Yeah.
So like, actually, if you know how to do that, maybe asking Alexa's cheating, but like, if you could use Google, then maybe you're actually prepared.
They cut you down. Cause like my boy will come home and be like, Dad, I had to write a paper today. Like, really wasn't hard. Is that just what you do? Write stuff? Yeah, I do. You little shit. That is what I do.
And it wasn't hard.
Yeah, it wasn't hard. I mean, I just had to like think of things. I'm like, yeah, that's it. He's like, so that's kind of it. Now he's, now I'm like, you see this 300-page book's like, pulling out look at the references, like trying to find a way to impress him. And he's like, no, I can do that. I would just have to sit down a couple times.
Just think about it.
Yeah, just think about it and put it down. I'm like, let me see what you wrote. It's like Daniel Boone War. I'm like, okay, you know what?
That's good. Yeah, you spelled
Wikipedia.
it right. You spelled it right. When you think about the intersection of your life, you got this newsletter, Biceps and Books.
Books and Biceps.
Books and Biceps. All right. I mean, perfect name.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. What is the goal of this? Is it to find books for meatheads, or is it actually to expand past that audience? Hey guys, I hope that you're enjoying this conversation. As you probably realize, we don't run any ads on this show. That's right. All the other podcasts, all the other YouTube shows that you watch, they have advertisers. We don't have any direct relationships with advertisers, and we simply create this because we enjoy doing it. Now that we do that though, we have a team. And if you'd like to support us, one way you can do that is to go subscribe to the Pomp letter. It's a daily letter that I write to about 235,000 people about my personal opinion on financial markets, business, technology, and Bitcoin. Just go to pompletter.com and you can sign up there. I'd love to have you join us, and it's a great, easy way to support the work that the team and I are doing on a daily basis. All right, let's get back into this conversation.
Yeah, it's like, so I always like newsletters that share people's process and stuff. Mm-hmm. So anybody can do like the wrap up stuff. I love your book reviews. Like, what do you get from this stuff? Well, I come across, when I'm researching a book, I might find 50 books for that book, just touching upon it, or articles and things like that. Or I may find a concept in the book that I want to explore more. And then also I happen to have written for all these fitness magazines and I work out a lot. So it's like just sharing a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes in putting a book together and sort of the lifestyle that puts the book together. So I always say it's like, imagine your like educated meathead friend was like recommending workouts and books to you every week. That's it. It's like the smart guy, like the idiot guy who you think's in the gym who also reads, he's got some things that you might want to check out. That's kind of the ethos of it. And so every week, like I share a book, like why I liked it. A lot of times I do get to do author interviews, which is cool over the years. I know, like, so a lot of people have books coming out that I'm going to read. They'll do 3 or 4 questions for me. And I try not to ask like lame ass questions. It's more like, do you write in a coffee shop? Do you write here? Like, what do you listen to when you're like real author-y type stuff? Yep. And then the biceps part is I'm a meathead, man. I just post pictures of my garage gym. I do put a lot of stuff in there that helps me, especially as I've gotten older, like, posture stuff, hip flexor stuff, like things will help you as you like to recover. If you're trying to get strength, if you're trying to do these things. So it's really what I'm doing now or what I've read now. But what I found is there's a huge contingent of guys like us who grew up working out, exercising, who are now have kids. Kids are getting older. They don't have time to read. They don't want to look for stuff. Is this a good book that's coming out?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I have a filter for it. And you know what? I do want to start benching again. Like a lot of the things that I write on the fitness side, I'm just responding to questions. Like I want to start like benching again. Like what's a good program, or what's a basic like powerlifting program to do? And I'm like, oh, the 5x5, and here's why. And actually, here's an article I wrote 8 years ago that will help you. Or, I want to start swimming, which I swim, a big one. Like I've done a bunch of like starter swimming workouts. So it's really just to help out. And then also, you build over book, you build readership, and they don't really always cross over. Maybe somebody who read 1996 isn't going to read a fatherhood book, who might not be into the Macho Man Randy Savage, but like they've all bought a book from me, and it kind of gets a little through line. I think it's smart to have them have a little bit of knowledge about who you are, how you put books together, and how you live.
It's interesting because James Clear, I was listening to an interview he did with maybe it was Tim Ferriss or somebody, and he talks about they picked 3 segments of people when they launched Atomic Habits, and one of them was CrossFit. And so he sent free books to a bunch of CrossFit influencers. And his point was like, if you're in CrossFit, there was like a 4-week period where everybody in the CrossFit world was posting this book. And he was trying to unpack in hindsight why they all accepted the book and posted it, whatever. He's like, because everyone always just sends them workout shit. Yeah. Right. He's like, I was the only one who sent them a book, and they all wanted to have their audience think they were not just a meathead. Yeah. So like, hey, here's this book that I'm reading about habits, and like everyone in the and like it like makes sense in hindsight. But it was like fascinating that he was like that led to kind of the initial spark that eventually led to one of the best selling books in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing, and he's brilliant with those insights, and it's right when you see it in practice, because you get how many people start living that lifestyle a little bit with you, right? Like I did a giveaway of stickers. It's just a nothing thing, but like gone, 50 of them gone in like 10 minutes within the second the newsletter gets out. And you realize that, yeah, people who work out a lot and are into it, they're not morons, most of them. There's the bros always juicing or whatever, but like a lot of them are just dads and dudes trying to stay safe, moms too, and women trying to get in shape. And what are books that might interest them? A lot of people don't read a lot. And I think what you do is great. You pick a lot of cross sections of maybe people who aren't into investing or into Bitcoin, but like, this is a great philosophy. This is a great lifestyle thing to think about. This is just a great way to look at life a new direction. And so I'll put like, it's got definitely sports and maybe history-ish heavy, but a lot of it is like really good writing, really good writers that I like. Have you read this new book that just came out? Here's why I bought it. Here's the author. Here's why I admire this author. And the emails that I get back, people respond pretty regularly are, that's great. I love that. I think I'm going to buy this book or whatever it is. But also it's the same on the fitness side. So to the same thing as CrossFit, anyone who's like, grew up loving these sports is gonna like the books. And if they're that niche of like that Venn diagram of like, I have like books, biceps, like meatheads, like if you're in there, maybe it's not 50 million people, but it might be 2. I'll take it. That's my group. That's my crew.
I love it. You said that you start working 8:15. So after you've kind of done all the morning routine, what do you do during the day?
Yeah. So I have a bunch of like creative consulting where I do a lot of copywriting. So I used to do like a ton of stuff for fitness brands, Muscle Milk, Cytosport, Gatorade, all those kind of things. So I do a lot of work for brands around, around local and national, just on helping them with their products, helping them like, go through and, put like the copy for how are we going to market this protein shake to this, or this cryo center that we're putting together for this. So I do a lot of those sort of client work. And then the bulk of what I do is books. So I have, right now I'm like deep in the weeds on a Macho Man Randy Savage biography. So that's like the bulk of my time. I actually ghostwrite too. So I usually have 1 or 2 ghostwriting books with usually professional athletes, like kind of elite entrepreneur CEO types. So I usually have a couple. Those take longer because you're only talking at their schedule, maybe once every week or 2, 45 minutes.
So walk me through, if you're writing a book like the Macho Man book, what does that process look like? How long will it take you?
So that one's going to end up being over a year. So it's like, if you're talking from idea, like I want to write a Macho Man book since I was like 12, but like you put a proposal together. It's really in depth. It's like everything you would do for the book, who the audience is, why they would want it, who are comp titles, how you're going to present it, what are the platforms you promote it on, not just your social, but like who are all the places that would like it, who's going to review it, whole thing. Sometimes a sample chapter, sometimes not. I've done enough books now that I can just be like, here's Charlie Ward, like here's how I write or whatever. But sometimes a sample chapter, a chapter of what you're going to do with it, and you pitch it, and then hopefully a traditional publisher wants it, or like I did with Jocks and Chief, I'll just put it out. Macho, I wanted to go with a legit big publisher because I want it out in stores. I wanted to work with a publisher who has done wrestling books before, particularly, so they can reach that really rabid, crazy wrestling audience. And so once you get past all that, and the publisher says yes, and you have an advance, and you're starting, the beginning is just absolute research. Like finding and interviewing every possible person who ever had anything to do with this person, and then going through and archiving the interview so you know what specifically to ask these people about. So at the beginning, it's almost just like fire hose of like, I'm just Googling and I know the things, but like, you know, you go in, there's a couple of resources. One of the best is a place called newspapers.com. And like somehow they've archived every newspaper, maybe 80% of them, all the way back to like the 1800s. So you'll just do like 1952, Angelo Poffo, right? And Macho Man's dad. What comes up? And just go, I will seriously go year by year with certain keywords, wrestling, this, that, just to get a feel of that. Then look at, like, I know the list of people I want to talk to, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and $1 Million Man. And like, you know, I know that major list that everybody else can name. But this books, and anybody who writes biographies will tell you, like, it's the other people. It's the guy who sat next to him on the bench in his high school baseball team. It's a minor league baseball player he lifted with at, you know, in the morning before games. Those are like, those put the stories together. So I'll spend
How do you find
months
those people?
In questions. Really, it's like pulling a thread. You get one. Facebook groups are actually like really good. So like the class reunion group for the Macho Man went to Downers Grove High School in Illinois. They just had their 25th reunion or whatever, 35th anniversary. We'll do public math. They just say whatever it is. They just had a reunion, and I found the Facebook page for it. And I was, you know, just messaging, here's what I'm doing. And 1 or 2 people got back to me. And luckily one of them was like one of the social leaders. Now they're all in their 70s. And you had a great conversation. He actually, he played baseball or basketball with him his freshman year, knew Lanny a little bit. Lanny's his brother, Leap and Lanny Poffo. You know, here's who else you should talk to. That's the key for anyone. I mean, the question you have to ask yourself is, when you're done with the interview, you say, who else should I talk to about this? What else? Is there something I'm missing? What else should I know? Like those 2 questions will get you like 50% of the better stories in your book. I'm sure you do it even with this. Like what is the other thing? Who else was on that team that you might know that might still be around? And you just pull that thread, and all of a sudden that one phone call will lead to 2, will lead to 3, will lead to 5. You know, some of them are just work. Like Macho Man was in Spider-Man as Bonesaw McGraw. Everybody remembers, you know, like it's awesome. And, you know, I found a couple interviews he did while on set. But I like went through Instagram and scoured, and I found he was Bonesaw McGraw. In the movie, there are some like sort of extras, but they kind of have bit parts called the Bonettes, these 4 girls who accompany him to the ring. Well, I found some Bonettes.
No way.
What was it like being on set with him? What was it like walking it? What was it off behind the scenes when you weren't filming? What was the director? Sam Raimi was the director. Like, how did he interact with Macho? Like, that kind of stuff. And you just dig and dig and dig. And it's these little moments that make it all worth it. It sounds goofy, but like when the Bonette DM'd me back and was like, I'd love to talk about Randy. He was great. And it's like, I have eyes onto a major movie that he was on. Awesome. And then she had someone else to talk to. And so you do that with every little scene in their lives. And eventually, you know, you talk to hundreds of people, and then you start pulling the articles about those things. And that's how you go. When you finally have enough per each section that you're comfortable with, and there's no limit, you just eventually get to a point where you're like, I think I've exhausted his high school baseball career. You just start writing.
And when you start writing, how much of it is like, I already have all the information now, I just got to kind of play editor, versus like you sit down, you have it in your head and you just start writing?
So I like to start every chapter as if no one's read any other part of the book. I mean, for the most part, like it could stand alone, so that they'll come in different spots. A lot of writers that I've always liked do that. And so like for instance, Randy Savage, like people may or may not know, he was a minor league baseball prospect. Like he played for the Reds, he played for the Tampa Tarpons. He was good. He made a single A All-Star team twice. Like, so you want to talk to people all through that. And at a certain point, you're hearing the same stories over. You're like, there's probably not much more here. In this case, his brother, Lanny Poffo, who you know, unfortunately passed away last week, I was talking to him a lot, and I had banked a bunch of interviews with him about Randy's life. And so once I have during those conversations with these people is when I'll start pinning, like, this is a great place to start. I try to start on action. Sometimes you can't always start in like the middle of a, you know, flying elbow drop off the top rope, or like when he's getting in a baseball brawl. It can't always be like jumping in the middle of an action movie. You sometimes need context, but I always try to start in that, like, what is the inciting incident of this chapter? What is the thing that if I'm reading at night, because I always put myself, like, very few people at 2 PM, like, I'm going to have an energy drink and sit and read all fired up. It's like you're winding down at the end of the day. Maybe they're lying in bed. Maybe they're, you know, sitting waiting outside of their cars thing. Like, what's going to get them, like, this chapter's exciting. They're in it. All of a sudden they're 2 pages in and we're going. And so usually I have a little good radar now after 10 or 15 books of like, I'll make a little highlight, and even in the conversation, like, and I'll just do it in bold, like I write badass, badass. Like, okay. And then as I go through my notes, I'll just search, like search badass. And it's like, okay, this is a good story to open this chapter. This is a good story to open this chapter.
What about when you're writing, or you're doing it at home?
I do
music,
a lot of coffee shop.
Coffee shop. Okay.
I do, when I'm at a coffee shop, There's a local one I have that I go to a lot, which is, I think I voted the other day, like in Twitter, like I reached the final boss level of coffee shop writing. I walk in, I get a head nod, and they roll over and meet me at the table with I just get like a small coffee.
Yeah. And they know.
And they know. And I just pay for it when on my way out. Like that is, it used to be, and the best part about this coffee shop is because I have my Macho Man shit spread everywhere and a couple of the guys don't speak English great, they just call me Macho. So not only like have I reached like, here's your coffee, it's like, hey, Macho. And I'm like, I'm never leaving here.
All right. And do you listen to music or you just like
listen
the
to the coffee
background?
shop. The coffee shop sounds are good. They actually have a pretty good like 90s station they put on or whatever. At home, funny enough, I used to listen to music like Explosion in the Sky or Jimi Hendrix. I like a lot, like Three Little Birds, some of these like over and over again. Bob Marley, I'm sorry. Over and over again. But I found this goofy YouTube thing that is just coffee shop background noise. Dude, it's the weirdest thing. It's got like millions and millions of views. So I'm not.
So I was just gonna say, there's some of these. There's like that. There's one. I've seen they have different locations, like the sounds of a certain place. There's fire.
I don't like
a fireplace.
They do fire. They do like Warm Rain Mountain, and that's one of the funny things about like becoming an author as I am. Like growing up in movies, it's like, okay, when you write, like you go to a house in the Hamptons or like some beautiful cabin in the mountains, it's secluded.
Like, just put on fucking YouTube.
For 3 weeks away, no one's bothering you. And now it's like, yeah, I wrote at the mechanic today. I wrote outside of my kids' taekwondo. I wrote at the like it's not like that. But the coffee shop sounds, it's weird. I listen to the same one over. I've tried a bunch. Like I know the cadence of this 1 hour. I know where I am in writing. Like, oh, the hour is up. I know the people in the background weirdly like, oh, that's the person's going to come in 5 minutes and talk about like their finals getting canceled or whatever. It's really weird. So weird so that I caught myself the other day listening to the coffee shop background noise at the coffee shop. Oh, wow. And then I knew I'd like crossed over into some metaverse where like I need to pull back on the coffee shop listening.
Yeah. But I do think everyone has like music specifically or like sound. I think you always remember where you are and like what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah. When I wrote the Charlie Ward book, I spent a week in Thomasville, Georgia, his hometown. And they had an amazing coffee shop. I think it was called like the Greenville Coffee Shop or something. And they had great coffee. And I don't even I had 1 cup of coffee a day. I just would have it while I'm writing. And they would always play this, and I had to find it. I'm blanking out on it now, but it was like Beethoven or Mozart, one of those. And it was always in the back, and it was very relaxing. And I would write after the end of the day of doing interviews and stuff. I'd go there and have like they had these amazing like pralines and cream cookies or whatever. And for a week they get to know you a little bit. Oh, he's the guy doing the Charlie Ward book, whatever. And I listened to it when I finally got home. And again, I changed it up for every book just so because it does bring back stuff. It sounds stupid, but like I want to get into like when I listen to this is what I listen to while I'm writing this. Like the Life of Dad book, for some reason I was into like Dave Matthews from like college. I listened over and over like the same 3 songs. Whenever I hear it, I'm like, oh, I finished that book. So in the Charlie Ward book, for the rest of it when I got home, I was listening to like Beethoven's, not the fifth, like the big one, but it was like a background one. And every time I hear it, because it's in movies and all that, it takes me immediately back to that cafe. It's weird.
The only time in my life that I have this like specific recollection is I was a catcher in baseball for like years and years and years. And one of the coaches was like, hey man, you should pitch. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, there's like a 2-way relationship here and you already got one side down. It's like, so I remember being like, all right, fine. And for whatever reason, I had like, remember the kids now would be like old school, like boombox things or whatever. Yeah. And we had got like a super cheap one or whatever. And you put the CD in there and you like put it kind of perfectly so that it doesn't fucking rock or anything. And the CD skips the whole thing. And Limp Bizkit had come out. And whatever the song was, and I just remember like whenever I would hear that, I'd be like, I remember being in the backyard, fucking throwing a baseball, being like, well, the coach is stupid enough to put me up there. Like I better just not hit the batter. Like as long as I don't do that, I'll be good. And it is funny how like you do kind of through your life have these sounds that always resonate, and you remember like what you were doing when you either first heard it or you heard it on repeat or whatever. And it's a cool way to bring those memories back.
Yeah, I just had that so I drove up to Tampa so Macho Man lived in Tampa at the end of his life. And when he died, he had a heart attack while driving his car and he crashed into a tree, and he'd already died, but it was like a pretty crazy moment. Like his wife was in the car, like she had to pull the tree, like they were going into oncoming traffic. Like she reached for the wheel because he's like a 220-pound dude who just like slumped over, and she hit this tree. And this tree has become kind of like a de facto memorial for Macho Man. Like, so I had to go visit it, see it. His house was close to there. I wanted to go get a feel for it. So I drove out with my daughter, and the deal was like, I let her come on the road trip with me, and she just like, I just want to listen to my music. Like my brother, Worst thing ever is I let them rotate songs in the car in the morning and it's just a fight. It's like Metallica and Taylor Swift just back to back jarring each other. So she just listened to Taylor Swift over and over and over again and Shake It Off, like the Take It Off.
Yeah.
And over and I would zone out whenever talking. And now it's been like a couple of weeks. And as I'm writing, like forever Taylor Swift Shake It Off, well, for me, will be linked to the Macho Man Randy segment.
Obviously what he would have listened to.
He would have loved it. Yeah.
The other piece that's like very fascinating to me about all of this is you write about sports or sports related topics, but you also have written a bunch of blogs and kind of articles and things like that. One of them I was reading and I literally was like, this is me and my brothers, is 250. Oh, yeah. Which is a driveway game that you all created. Yeah. And I'll put some context around this. So my daughter just got like a child basketball hoop. Mm-hmm. And so of course, first thing I literally got put together. The second I was done putting it together, I got the ball and I said, hey, come here. And she kind of waddled on over and I put it right underneath the basket and I dunked on her. Just to rule number one, don't stand under the rim. Like rule number one of life, don't stand under the rim. But I was explaining to my wife, I was like, look, if we had this in our house as a kid, like we would have made up a game. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you see here on the tile, like, the 3 tiles away would be certain points. And like and she was like, are you guys fucking psychos? And I was like, I'm pretty sure everyone who has a brother, something similar. And I was reading your piece. And so 250 is a game you guys created.
I'm so happy you brought this up. This is the greatest thing I'll ever write. No matter what I do ever, this is it, because it touches on, I mean, I've had guys write me like, I'm crying as I'm writing this. Like this brings back my older guys, maybe my son or whatever, something happened. So it's probably the piece that's resonated the most. And it's the one that resonated the most with me. So growing up, as I have a younger brother and I, best friends, my dad and I are close. The 3 of us are very, very close. And one of the games we came up with, eventually, as you're doing on your daughter, like you just start working your dad, right? Like you're playing two, we play, hustle or 21, the 3 of us, and friends would come over. But like once you hit like 13, 14, 15, even if you're like, I think I'm in pretty good shape, but I'm pretty sure my son's 15, he's going to just be bodying me up and killing me.
The first time you beat your dad, you're on.
Right. And I'm sure your family's the same. Nobody is ever allowed to win. Like you win, you won by your own like grit and guts. Like nobody's ever like, oh, hey, me. And to this day, like, my son doesn't win unless like he wins. And so as we got older, like we'd start switching from like hustle and 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, wherever we play. My dad was never a great athlete, but an amazing eye-hand coordination guy.
I think you said specifically in the piece that with the foul line, he couldn't jump over.
Couldn't jump over the foul line. Yeah. He couldn't jump over the foul line. Darts, pool, like anything where you're standing, eye-hand coordination was great. And so as we got older, like it became, we were going to even play horse anymore because we would all be too competitive and go all the way around. Or my brother and I would decide to play so far away that my dad just couldn't get it up there. He's in like 45, or now then almost that, but like 50, 55 years old. He couldn't reach it.
When you're a kid, by the way, you definitely like do all the things that your dad can't do. Like 3 dribbles with your right hand, crossover, jump off your left foot, and then like hook shot. Oh, and he's like, I can't even fucking remember this.
All we would do is jump and touch the backboard with our left hand and lay up with the right. And he'd be like, I can't do this shit. Why? I can't do this shit, Every time my brother, who could jump higher than me, would then pull it on me and be like, I'm going to grab the rim and lay up. And they'd be like, I can't do this shit, right? So it was like just an never-ending game. So we came up with this game. It is the perfect equalizer. Anyone who has a driveway hoop, daughter, son, we play with both of them now. It's to 50. Very simple rules. All you do is the first person to 50 wins. It's like baseball rules. You get up first, shoot till you miss. Next person goes. First person to get to 50 wins, and you get your last ups.
It's all like free throws.
Free throws at the free throw line. That's all you do. It's perfect because you can do it after dinner. Like everyone's just relaxed. You don't have to get sweaty. Just had a couple cheeseburgers. You're hanging out. No big deal. And so we started playing this game my last year being home in high school. And my brother's 3 years younger, so he was a sophomore. And then forever home every college. We played thousands and thousands of this game. And my dad, as he got older, the thing that used to kill us about this was he would always be like in his recliner inside watching like a Red Sox game or Seinfeld or whatever. And we'd like knock on the window like 8 o'clock in the summer as the sun was going down. After we played like real games, we'd be like, hey, to 50. And he'd come out. And it used to be so frustrating because he would come out in like Docksiders. And my father, he's like 6'1", a husky guy. Again, not a great athlete, but for some reason, he was gifted with an unbelievable ability to hit free throws. This guy who couldn't like do a jump shot, like could not like come around a screen, would stand up, having not shot. He used to do this thing every time. I could do it now, rub his hands, and hit 25 in a row, 30 in a row, cold. And he used to be like, I don't need any warm-ups. And my brother, who was an excellent high school basketball player, captain of his high school team, and then me would just be like so frustrated. And him and my brother would win all the time. To this day, have never won.
You've never won?
With my dad involved.
Okay.
On Christmas Day, I beat my brother and both our sons in a legit to 50 game for like the first time I've ever beat my brother. I'm not a good foul shooter, as you can imagine. But my dad would probably win like 70% of the time.
How pissed was your brother?
This Christmas? Furious. Because it was the first time, our sons are both 9, they're 2 months apart. And it was the first time we all played. Me and him built his hoop at his house like the end of the summer. Kids weren't really old enough to play with a real ball from real foul line. They just got strong enough. And it was the first time, for the record, the 4 of us played to 50. And I won. And he was like, my brother's like an awesome athlete and was very, very pissed off. So Craig, it's on posterity now. It's on the Pomp pod. Like everybody knows.
Literally, I'm imagining my brothers and I playing something where like, if I knew I was better than at it, they know too, right? And vice versa. And like, they won't admit it, but like, whatever. And then if in front of our kids, they beat me, and now our kids think that like they're better.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is we play.
I would sit there and make you play over and over and over again until they know literally I am better than him.
We play one-on-one every Friday morning.
Still
every Friday. Right now, he lives 15 minutes from me. He drives over. We play in a court in my development, and every Friday morning we play best of 3. Games to 11. And since he's moved here a year and a half ago, I have not won. I win games all the time, 11 to 13, but I never, he's an inch or 2 taller than me, better basketball player. But we play all the time. And so winning that game to 50, I was like, this is my thing
hold
now.
on. But you're a good brother for this, because like my brothers and I, that tradition would end quickly if like one person didn't win.
I know. I think it's an age thing. Like I beat him plenty of times growing up.
Yeah.
It's just, I think I've reached the point where like when I reached down for that 3rd gear, and our games, some games he just mops forward me, but like most of the time, like I'll win one, he'll win one, and the next one's a battle, but he can always just go down low, way better down low. And like, I just get cold at the wrong times. I'll foul the shit out of them. I'll do all the stuff I'm supposed to do. And I'm right there. It's not like, I win all the time, just not that 3rd clinching game. Yeah. So winning the to 50 game was amazing. But to the piece you're talking about, going back, so after playing for years, and I'd love everybody to read it, but on the final night, we're moving. I'm moving to LA, my brother's moving to LA, and my parents moving to Florida. So the house is empty. We've lived there for 10, 12 years, and nothing's in the house. It's like we're all leaving the next morning. The only thing out, and this is like a movie, I swear, but the basketball. No one had ever gone to 50 ever. My dad hit the 40s maybe 5 or 6 times, got the 30s with like what I would say is like startling regularity. Like almost like 30, 32, 33. It was just a regular like Sunday night for my dad, which is ridiculous because I couldn't get like 7 or 8, but my brother would get a couple and win. And so the last night we're like, all right, we'll go. We always decide who go first. We ever had a random order. And my dad steps up and just goes. And goes, and the piece I really build it up, but like, and I won't draw it out, but like he goes and goes and goes, and he gets like, we're all sitting there thinking, and we weren't idly sitting there watching him. Like we're doing all the little kid bullshit, all this, we're throwing it at his knees, like I'm whipping it at his chest, so he has to like hurts. Like my brothers, like used to put a hex on the ball and like throw it like 30 feet in the air, so that, like if you're on the foul line, you had to like move over to catch it.
Of course,
move over.
Whenever to break the rhythm.
And all of a sudden he's like 30, 35, 40, 42. And all of a sudden we're just like, no one's talking. And it's just like dribble, swish. And then my brother and I are looking at each other. No one's saying like a pitcher in a perfect game. Hits 50. And he stops. And my brother, of course, being who he is like, you got to keep going. And I'm like, what do you mean you got 50? He's like, I can get 51. I'm like, no one's ever come close. And my dad's like, he's right. And he went, and I think it was 66 or 67, but it was the last night in the house, the most magical moment I've ever had in my whole life of sports. And like, I get tingles thinking about it. It made it Best American Sports Writing. It was like an honorary mention in the book. And like every year I post on Father's Day, and every year it gets this influx of people reading about whatever game they played on the driveway. And my brother hit like 10 or 12 in a row. I hit like 7 or 8. So no, we didn't come close, but it was just like last night after all the years, we kind of called it slaying the driveway dragon. Like it was amazing. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's probably one of my favorite stories of all time.
You ever watch the movie Basketball?
Yes.
Right? So like that's the movie I think of when you're playing driveway basketball with your brothers, of like all the shit talking, all the things that you can do to distract them, and like all this stuff. For those who haven't watched this ridiculous game, we literally recreated playing that game. Like, you hit a shot, it's like a single, a double, a triple, like whatever. We're just inventing stuff. Yeah. But like if you recreate the game, that means that it opens up the complete approval to talk as much shit as possible to each other. Yeah. And I remember literally more fights from that stuff than like anything else. So to not only have your dad hit 50, but to do it while you guys are talking shit, like no layups, no easy games, nothing right?
And I remember like we would do that. My dad, he was older, he had like a tricky back. Like we would walk up and place the ball like 1 foot in front of his feet on the ground and walk away. So like total dick move for like an older guy with a tricky back. So he has to step off the line. He has to move his foot position. He has to pick up the ball. And then it was just like boom, 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 just a machine.
I love it. Did he appreciate the moment as much?
It was like the natural. And I'm saying it in the clearest sense. That's whatever that would have felt like in real life if it happened when Hobbs hit this, like the ball hit the ground and it like snapped us out of a trance. Because he hadn't moved in like 15 minutes. He was just there. And we all looked at each other and we had to do our turns. And then we just sat. Like I remember sitting, our whole house had like steps going into like the front door, the sides. We had a side door in the house by the driveway. And we just sat and it was like, this weight was just that you could feel the moment. I'm looking at the sky. I'm like, there was no cell phones. Like you couldn't just take a picture of the three of us after the moment. Like, but I could, in my head, like I know exactly what that moment felt like. I remember it clearly. I can picture the ball, the hoop, like the square was gone. It was so faded. Like it tilted a little to the left. I remember every nuance of that and of that night. And then I did the piece. It was, I think we were trying to the anniversary of it, but I did it for Father's Day for my, like, you know, what do you get my dad? Every dad has what they need for the most part. And I published it and didn't tell him. And I asked my mom on the side, like, you have pictures of us playing basketball. I know we don't have any from that night. And so I got it and got this this cool blog that used to compete with Grantland for Yahoo Sports. It was called The Post Game, who I used to write for. And I was like, I want to do this Father's Day piece for my dad. And they were like, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. I'd already written a bunch for them. And so we posted it. And all I did was just send the link. And like, the waterworks. And he shared it with, it actually went, I don't know if viral is the word, but like amongst people who cared about this stuff, like it just got picked up. And it was this little goofy story that got into this, like the Best American Sports Anthology, which is not the whole piece, but like a mention of it. And it's just one of those things that I'm so glad I wrote forever. And now, as you bring it up full circle a month ago, like we're playing now with our kids. And it's just, hopefully it's a through line that for, you know, hundreds of years, Finkel's are battling into 50.
Your kids are going to be like, I got to win.
Yeah. Oh, and when they do, they'll have legitimately beat us.
Like if your dad has the flex factory, you have to care about winning.
My son's version will come in. He'll like just show up one day and bench like 325 and be like, what?
It's easy. You just sit down and just press it.
He'll totally, Dad, all you have to do is take the weight and just put it off your chest. I don't know what the problem is.
I do not want to have smart ass kids.
It's the best, dude. It actually is great because like you just, when your wife, my wife didn't have like it's just seeing go through it. Like I know everything he's thinking. Like it's not the modern version, but you just know what's going through his head because it all went through your head. You know what he thinks is funny. Like he just says balls all the time now because it's funny. And I remember like being yelled at, like, stop saying balls. It's like, why? It's funny. Because it is funny. A kid just like, what are you doing? Balls. It's funny. I don't know. I don't tell you.
But like, I think I appreciate that stuff so much more now as to like the kids who were doing all that stuff, like basically end up one of two ways. Like they end up really successful and like they work hard, they like figure it out, whatever. And then obviously there's some that kind of, you know, end up in jail or whatever. But like, there's very much this like, okay, you are not going to end up as like the mid-level manager of an accounting firm at like, you know, middle of nowhere, Kansas. Yeah. Right? Like you are going to get one of the extreme outcomes.
There's a creativity element that my son has and my daughter had. My daughter, like, she like displays like her abilities more. She's a very like caring person. I could see her being a vet or something along those lines. Like, who knows? But my son is like at that creative thing that like you see in people when you look back on what they're going to come up with of like entrepreneur or whatever. Like he just makes up stuff, which is what I did all the time. Like he has his own exit. Like when he leaves for school or WWF, you picture like whatever the guys say, he'll say like, he goes, I brush my teeth, I comb my hair, and I'm going to walk out the door like, I don't care. And he goes, dude, it's the coolest thing ever. Like wouldn't you, if you were 12,
where did you learn that?
Yeah, just came up with it.
My wife and I have talked about what's the number one thing we want to teach our daughter, and it's decision making. But the second thing, kind of like a 1A to me maybe, is some people would call it negotiating. I think of it as like the bullshit ability, right? Like the shit talking ability. Because if you're able to do that, I've always thought that like that's basically what you do all day long, right? And the people that I see get the most stuff done, whether they are negotiating with people they work with, whether it's people they run into in life, whether it's business, like just all throughout their entire day, they're bullshitting.
Yep.
Right. And not in like a negative connotation where they're like making stuff up, lying, like whatever, but just like, it's like this like street level version of negotiating that ends up getting you stuff. And I think like a lot of it is if you're, you know, if you're doing that, walk into school, Like you probably are doing some stuff at school when you're negotiating in the cafeteria too.
Yeah, he's a kid who's gonna like bring the like kind bars from home and sell them at lunch or something.
100%.
He has a super drink snack stand that we set up by the basketball court in the summers to make money. Like he just has that thought, and I think what you said is 100% true. There's, you sit around in the world of writing, like you'll sit around a magazine writing session room, and you look around when you're in your 20s, like I wonder, is he gonna write the movie he said he was gonna write? Is this guy gonna run the magazine or start the thing that they're gonna start? And so much of the things that end up happening are just because you just talked about it and talked to the people about wanting to do it. And I remember talking about wanting to do my first book, and I was just like looking for an athlete like that had a moment that I had some relationship with that I could reach out legitimately and say, when I mentor a lot of younger writers, like do something small with someone and do a great job, especially in writing or anything creative, but probably in any field. And then hit them, like if they're happy with it, bide your time, set up, we did this was great. Here's how we can take it to the next level. And here's why I think it would be good for both of us. And that was me. I did a piece on like helping guys get their vertical up with Nate Robinson. And it was great. We happened to talk on the phone. We got along, called up again when the article came out, did well. And it just happened to be that spring when some people remember, but like for about a month, he was like the most talked about guy in basketball. Like he outdueled LeBron in the Heat. He was playing in the Bulls lost Derrick Rose, and he was the guy. And he was scoring like 24 in the fourth quarter, had 2 comeback wins against the Nets. And it was amazing. And then they got eliminated because, ultimately they weren't that good. But I emailed him after, congratulated him on the run, emailed his agent like, hey, this was great. We should capitalize. And then I put the article together and I still have the email of like, there's not many guys that have won 3 dunk contests that have played football and basketball in college, that are 5'8", that played for the Knicks, that did what you just did. Like, this is a great culmination to like a real success story. I'd love to write the book. And, if you don't have that ability to have that conversation and know how to place it and to think creatively of how can I take something that will be a win for him? Because he talked about he'd always wanted to write a book. It was like a dream thing for him. And I would want to write books in general. And I thought of other athletes, but it was just the perfect situation. And we did it. And so when I think of my son and how he just thinks of these things, I can see him on some level, and my daughter too, in different aspects of like, there's an angle there. And I'm not just going to think about it. I'm going to talk to the guy who's doing it and figure out a way for both of us.
You have to be crazy enough to think that you could actually do it. Like you thought that he may say yes, so you ask.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, he did it. We talked on the phone, and the reason I thought he'd say yes was because like when I do those emails, and anyone listening trying to pitch things, I think the key is to like start off with why it'd be awesome for them. Like a lot of people don't even know. I started the email like, did you know about 80% of Nate Robinson's fans have no idea he was Mr. Basketball and Mr. Football? I bet you 80%, 90% of the people have no idea that he could have played at USC on the championship teams with Matt Leinart, Lendale White, and Reggie Bush, but chose to stay home because he wanted to help build the program. Like, no one knows this stuff. And I think they should know that he's not just some short guy who's got crazy hops, but here's all the things that he did. And I'd love to help him tell the story because I enjoyed working with him so much on the basketball piece. That is the most airtight pitch you can give anybody for anything, right? And if you can do that in any field, but it works for books especially well, they can picture it. Yeah, no one does know that. 90% of the people and the fans who see me in the basketball court don't know these things. And it's my job to let them know these things about me. And a book is perfect for that. And so that's how that came about. And it's all from that ability to think and talk a little bit different than other people.
Stand out.
Yeah.
That's it. Where can we send people to get the books?
My website is johnfinkel.com. @John_Finkel on Twitter is where I post about everything I do. I have a lot of pictures from a lot of stuff. I have Batista putting me in a headlock from all my muscle and fitness stuff that I used to do, and like all the book signings and things I do. I put a lot of stuff out there, and if you're into Macho Man, that's the big one I'm working on now, and I put updates there too. And then go on there and sign up for Books and Biceps. It is like every single person who likes has a friend who works out but also reads, that's me. That's your guy. That's it. I'll do it for you. So.
Books and Biceps is very good. I highly suggest people sign up for that. Thanks. And then when is the Macho book coming out?
So Macho comes out next spring, actually. We're about halfway through getting the writing done. So there's a huge lead time.
You're going to make people wait a whole year for this.
I'm going to wait a whole year. I'll come back. I'll bring the book. We'll jump off the top ropes and we'll talk about it.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed it. We'll definitely do it again in the future.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.